This meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody to the first meeting for Senate Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. And I would first ask that you bear with us a little bit because we're experiencing a new electronic voting and other things. And I'm also happy to tell you all that we're live streaming now, and this is the first of that, so that the public can see their government in action, and I think we all think that's a good thing. So first thing, clerk, open the roll so we can see who's here. And how do I vote? Yay. Thank you. I said bear with us. All right, we have a quorum?
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, close the roll. Thank you. Senator McDougall, I think you're first on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to echo some of the comments you made. Our staff was tremendous in putting together the live streaming system, and it is even effective enough that it follows which mic is on, and we don't have to have an individual manning it. And they came in about $200,000 under budget, so I was very proud of them and thank for their efforts.
Fantastic.
Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 414. Mr. Chairman, this is a pretty simple piece of legislation in an effort, and many of y'all have traveled through airports and seen how the concession stands there operate, a lot of them with a tremendous amount of fresh food, whether it be salads or things that are traditionally healthier in nature. So this is an effort to try to create that sort of environment in individual workplaces. So instead of us just having traditional vending machines where you might get nabs or M&Ms or potato chips, that you would have the ability to set up fresh food type of operations, and they're calling it micro mart. So this puts in place the regulations that you would have to establish in order to set up a micro mart, make sure that we're ensuring for the health and safety of the individuals using it. But this is specifically for individual businesses, and it's unattended. So that's the key thing, different from when you're going to the airport. Somebody takes your money. This would be in a business like in Hanover, we have a business, Owens & Minor. You could set this up in your facility. All the employees would be able to go and partake of it, but we have a set of rules in place of what has to be there for the health and safety of the employees.
Okay, any questions of Senator McDougall on this? Senator Marsden.
There we go.
Same way
Thank
you
you.
always do.
There we go. Senator McDougall, would this assist in the health department inspections because it's now a permitted business and communicating with them, and also follow up with that is this assist in the collection of sales taxes?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think the specific desire by the industry is to make sure that they know that they can be doing this in an effective way and are not creating a restaurant. So there is a specific direction, but because you would be having a permit, certainly the health department would be able to inspect you. Right now, the concern is if you did this, are you in essence creating a restaurant type establishment? This makes it clear if you follow the act that you're creating a micro mart, but it's not competing against existing entities like convenience stores and markets because it's in an individual business. And I'm sure they're going to be collecting taxes.
Does that answer your question, Senator Marsden? Anybody else have a question for Senator McDougall? If not, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this? I'm sorry, Senator Evans.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask Senator McDougall if he could just go over again the health inspections. Is this any different than any other establishment? Would there be like sandwiches that are perishable? Would they be inspected just the same as almost any other establishment selling the same food?
Mr. Chairman, it does. As you look through the bill as it's designed, there are specific things that you have to do, like in reference to refrigeration and the type of refrigeration that you have to use. There is no specific requirement that somebody has to inspect on a particular time frame, but there are specific requirements that you have to do in order to be compliant with the act, and there is a penalty if you operate one of these without complying with the list in the act. But again, Mr. Chairman, right now, this is not really occurring, and a lot of businesses on the small to medium size would find it cost prohibitive to set up a facility that would provide some of this fresh and healthier food, because you have to have personnel in place to operate it like a restaurant. This would allow it to exist without that personnel in place. So it's unmanned.
Thank you, Senator McDougall. All right, if there are no other questions from the committee, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologies for missing the beginning of your presentation. And you mentioned the penalty. Is it correct that the penalty is a Class 1 misdemeanor?
Yes.
Is that where we typically go with these in other places, or would a civil fine not be more fitting?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a strong feeling in that direction. I think this is when it came back, it's not my area of expertise to know how the health ones are, but I don't have a strong feeling either way. Staff might be able to assist of what the standard is, but my guess is it's all over the board. That's what Mr. Meacham is nodding his head yes to. There's some in all different directions. So I think some of this language was sort of template from other similar statutes.
Senator Suderline, are you offering an amendment, or you just?
I'd be happy to offer an amendment if that's fine for the patron.
Mr. Chairman, maybe Mr. Meacham could enlighten us of what the different standards are, but I think that part of the bill was taken from other similar type code sections.
Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I don't, this was taken from other similar code sections, and I don't know what this typical penalty would be. If I were to guess, I would say that the misdemeanor relates to the fact that food is being served or sold at any rate, but I don't know the different levels.
Mr. Chairman, the penalty part was not the focus of the bill, putting the established parameters around, and I think, as Mr. Meacham indicated, I think he just took that language from other places in the code, but it is not the focus at all. But I think it was similar to what we found in other places.
Right,
but I don't have an accounting of those different sections.
It may very well be that under these food enforcement provisions that those are the standard enforcement mechanisms. If the committee's comfortable in moving forward, maybe you could just look at that, and if we feel like something needs to be done later, there could always be an amendment on the floor if the bill's favorably acted upon. Is that okay with you, Senator Suderline?
Yeah, yes, I'll just abstain so it can go on the regular calendar then.
Okay. Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this? Anyone like to speak in support of it?
Move to report.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to report. Clerk, can you please open the roll? Everybody voted. Please close the roll.
11 ayes, 0 nays.
Almost unanimously, Senator McDougall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Thank you.
committee.
Senator Cosgrove, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this afternoon, I have Senate Bill 214
Okay.
for your consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill is brought on behalf of the City of Virginia Beach and those who live along the shoreline in the Hampton Roads area. What the bill does, it prohibits fishing from Menhaden with purse nets at certain times within 3 miles of the shoreline of Virginia Beach, extending to the North Carolina border, and any time in the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries within 1 mile of the mean low water mark. The bill authorizes the Marine Resources Commission to assess a civil penalty of up to $10,000 for each violation, with penalties collected to be deposited into the Virginia Marine Products Fund. Mr. Chairman, fishing Menhaden too closely to the shores where tourism activity creates existing problems along the shores of Virginia. And as you mentioned earlier today on the floor, agriculture is the biggest industry in the Commonwealth. Well, tourism is not far behind. I'd also mention that several years ago, Menhaden fishing industry agreed with members of the General Assembly, and we do oversee the Menhaden as the one organism that's that we oversee, they would maintain certain distances from Virginia shores. The gentleman's agreement has not been heeded. SB 214 would prohibit those purse net fishing within 1 mile, as I said before, of the Chesapeake Bay shorelines. It has the penalty, and there's a civil penalty, because basically menhaden fishing is a big, big business, as you know. Penalty seems stiff, but there has to be some way to codify that we will not tolerate that behavior. In 2016, there was quite a spill very close to the Chesapeake shore line. Unfortunately, there were some people there vacationing, and a little boy actually came out of the water. He was just covered in red and fish guts. And it wasn't because of the fishing that actually happened, but they were purging byproducts from the fishing process.
The ballast.
Right. Well, I don't know if it was the ballast, Mr. Chairman, or actually how they processed the fish. Look, I'm not trying to stop menhaden fishing. I mean, I've carried that bill a lot, okay? Not stopping, but having us overlook menhaden, but take it to the MRC. The General Assembly has the oversight on menhaden. Now, I know that we don't have a special boat, and if we looked at all 140 of us, we'd have like 2.5 days each to go out on the boat and do our job to oversee menhaden, but we never do that either. But I think this bill is right. It's the agreement that Omega, now a Canadian company, by the way, used to be a Texas company, now it's a Canadian company. But they employ a lot of Virginians, and I don't want to hurt those Virginians. But I do want them to abide by the agreement. And it seems the only way we can make them do that, Mr. Chairman, is to put some teeth into that agreement. And that's what this bill does.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cosgrove. And I neglected to mention at the very beginning, but we do have a standing policy in agriculture that we give 5 minutes for each side, and we do it on every bill. So with that, Senator Cosgrove, do you have any witnesses?
Yes, we
Anyone
have
who'd like
several
to
people who'd like to speak to the issue, Mr. Chairman.
Bring those on up.
Bob Mathias from Virginia Beach is here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Bob Mathias, City of Virginia Beach. We've had in our legislative package, the City of Virginia Beach, the largest city, language requesting that there be more maintenance management of menhaden fishing. The senator was exactly right. They are an impact on our tourism business, which is the second largest industry in Virginia, and certainly the largest in Virginia Beach, right behind the military. Occurrences such as the senator alluded to off Mr. Shiflett's Convention Center Hotel offshore drive, something will make tourists not come back to Virginia Beach, and word of mouth is what really hurts and helps Virginia Beach tourism. So experiences like that are not going to help Virginia Beach. Keeping the boats over 3 miles off the beach along the ocean and 1 mile off the beaches of the Chesapeake Bay, we think is a fair and equitable solution, and is part of the gentleperson's agreement that was agreed to several years ago. Thank you.
And Jim, just curious, you have a ton of boats that are in and out of Virginia Beach. And,
Yes, sir.
And military vessels and all kinds. You just want to keep this one boat out. You don't want to keep all the fishing boats and everything else out.
The larger boats, sir, stay well off the beach.
Okay.
The military boats and things like that, they may come into the inlet. Some of the SEALs come in and out of the inlet. We do have charter boats, but they mostly go straight off the beach, and they're not discharging fish parts by and large when they're in close proximity to the beach.
All right. Thank you.
I believe that's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in support of your bill?
No, I
Senator
believe
Cosgrove?
Mr. Mathias will be our one witness.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the bill? You all come on up, please. Just, please, everybody, remember we've got 5 minutes for the group, so be respectful of other folks who'd like to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Doris Krause-Mays, President of the Virginia AFL-CIO, and we stand in opposition of this bill. This is about jobs and the economy in Virginia. I do not know how many times in Virginia, when you look at an industry that has had 3 generations of people working there, This is not only workers' livelihood, but this is a community's livelihood. Omega Protein is among the largest employer in the county, over 200 and some jobs. So what happens if that is gone? There's nothing there. One of the questions that I got asked this morning was someone asked me about the company and the union being on the same side. And for some reason, that shocked them. And I explained to them, this is not about us and it's not about them. It is about all of us moving together for the livelihood of workers and for the livelihood of our communities. And if this bill is passed, it could impact all of that for workers and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Ken Pinkert, and I was listening to the gentleman ahead of me speak about what goes on. I am a commercial fisherman. I work on fishing vessel Rappahannock, one of the most modern boats of its kind in its class. I'm a third-generation fisherman, and the difference between my job and others' job that work every day is we get paid the old way by what we catch, not by the hour, not by how many days we work, but by what we actually catch. So anytime there's an impact, if one says they want to put us 3 miles off, then that's 2 more miles of fish that we can't go and try to catch. So anytime there's any kind of impact in that fashion, it affects not only me, it affects my family, it affects my workers that I represent. I'm also a vice president with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union who represent the fishermen on these boats. And so I would encourage you that we do not oppose this bill in all fashions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name's A.J. Erskine. I'm with Reedville Bait. We own one purse seine boat out of Reedville that will fish for bait products, that for crabbers and lobstermen, as well as sport fishermen up and down the East Coast and the Gulf. We're opposed to this bill. We don't feel that there's valid science that says we should not be fishing in the bay. The fish are migratory, and they certainly go within 3 miles at times to the shore. And we do catch fish in the bay. We also catch fish offshore. We feel this bill is based more on aesthetics, that they don't want to see the boats in there, not based on science. So we're opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ben Landry with Omega Protein. I've spoken to you guys before. We're opposed to this bill for a number of reasons. We do take great exception to this idea that a gentleman's agreements have been broken. I'm not aware of any date that since the companies put the agreement in place in 2015 that we've harvested fish in the area that the agreement addresses. I'm also not aware of any fish spills that have taken place in the Virginia Beach area. They do occur from time to time on the Eastern Shore, but nothing that would be impacted by this particular legislation. So we're a responsible company. We may be Canadian owned at this time, but we've been in Virginia for over 140 years. I think that means something. And this doesn't have any biological or impact. You're not going to see more menhaden coming into the bay if this bill passes. We're a responsible, sustainable company, and I'd appreciate you defeating this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ryan Dunn with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Like getting the session started in a bipartisan effort, the Chamber and the AFL-CIO on the same side, so it'll be a good year this year. We're opposed to this bill. You know, we just see it as a burdensome regulation being put on an important industry, both to the Northern Neck and also the amount of business that's done through the Port of Virginia, through Omega and the Menhaden fishery. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassy, Virginia Manufacturers Association. I'm out of time. I'll just associate my comments with the other speakers. We oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are any questions for Senator Cosgrove? Senator Cosgrove, do you want to follow up on anything?
Yes, just very briefly, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep my comments
ahead.
brief. You know, this is not about jobs and the economy. This is just about preserving the shorelines in Hampton Roads. It has nothing to do with reducing Omega's catch. I mean, that's already set. I believe you sit on the board that sets those catch limits. This bill will not impact Omega in any way, shape, or form if they abide by the agreement that they already have. Basically, all we want them to do is abide by this. Again, the bill does not impact menhaden fishing. It doesn't impact the health of the bay. Now, when I was working for the Navy, I did a lot of radar work, and basically line of sight is 23 miles for the curvature of the earth. We're not worried about looking at fishing boats either. Off of Virginia Beach shores, we see all kinds of boats, whether they're military, charter boats, fishing boats, oyster trawlers, it doesn't matter. We see them all. And actually, the tourists kind of like that. But what they don't like is when their kid walks out of the water covered in fish guts. So that's it, Mr. Chairman. This is not in any way, shape, or form wanting to hurt Omega. We just want to make sure that we protect the very valuable and economically viable shores in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cosgrove. Are there any questions? Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Senator Cosgrove.
Yes, sir.
Is the concern here more about the boats being visible or the discharges from the boats? It seems that the bill doesn't address your greatest concern, which is the discharges. It addresses where the boats can go, which I guess indirectly, affects where the discharges take place. But it would seem to me that addressing inappropriate discharges would be the better course of action.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying, discharges happen. If it's further off the shore, it's not going to affect, the tourism industry. You always have ballast that's, pumped out of the vessels. This bill basically says you can't fish within 1 mile of the shoreline in the Chesapeake Bay or 3 miles of the shoreline in the Atlantic Ocean, solely to protect those shorelines that creates, so many tax dollars for the Commonwealth.
If there are no other questions, is there a motion on this bill? Senator Peterson.
Mr. President, I'm going to move to PBI, and I think, am I on?
Yep.
No.
Okay.
Oh, press your.
There we are, wrong thing, okay. We've been hearing this bill since I've been in the Senate and probably since I've been in the House. Not this one. Well, I feel like we've been hearing menhaden bills. And I feel like right now we're at a pretty good equilibrium, at least from what I'm hearing from the general public. So anyways, I just moved to PBI.
There's a motion properly seconded to pass the by bill indefinitely. Clerk, will you please open the roll to vote?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Clerk, close the roll. Thank you, Senator Cosgrove.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Let's see, Senator Reeves, I think you're next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 470 before you.
Senate Bill 470.
Mr. Chairman, this bill was brought to me by a constituent actually from Northern Virginia who had kind of moved farther west, and they bought a farm. As Virginia's new Virginia economy kind of changes, although agriculture, as you mentioned earlier, was still on the top of the list, we've gotten to more kind of organic farms and some of these smaller farms, and we've done a lot of work there. This individual sent me a letter asking the process for rabbits. Apparently, there's quite an appetite for that in our food service industry now and some of these gourmet restaurants. And some of the challenges she was having and didn't want to violate the laws that currently stand. So currently in Virginia law, there's an exemption for some poultry under this current code section. Let's see, what is it? It's listed before you, Mr. Chairman. It's 3.2-5121. What we're trying to do is allow the board to adopt regulations pursuant to a subsection there to allow small farms the ability to sell to restaurants. And this is part of the inspection process, so they're processed correctly and everything else. Right now, if I'm a small farmer, I can only sell to you if you came by as an individual. But if you owned a restaurant, you could buy it from the restaurant could buy it, but you couldn't serve it to your patrons. And so what we're trying to do, and most of these small farms that produce them maybe do 10 or 15 rabbits at a time. It's not mass produced. The folks who do all the inspecting from the federal government, the only inspector they have is all the way in Blacksburg. So it's just underfunded and all those things. So what we're asking for is to get in the same exemption that currently stands for poultry. And it's a waiver under this code section. And so there's a market for it. It's a growing market. And we'd like to see if we could get a exemption just like they do on poultry for some of these smaller farms. And that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Just because I don't know anything about it, Senator Reeves.
I had to learn too.
Is there
Senator.
any particular health concern with regard to rabbits?
Not necessarily. It takes about 15 minutes to process a rabbit. But no, and the health benefits of eating rabbit over some of the other foods we have is a lot better. I have some statistics here, but I don't know if the committee is interested in it or not about that. But kind of a,
Senator Peterson has a question.
Are these free-range rabbits?
No, I took care of some of those on Sunday. But no, these are domestic rabbits. They're grown for that purpose. And like I said, these are for small farms that, there's a lot of them out there. You see them on Saturdays and Sundays at your farmer's market, and they produce other produce and stuff like that. But there's a growing market for it. So that'd be my answer for it.
All right, are there any questions for Senator Reeves? Senator Black.
Excuse me. I'm all in favor of this. I know rabbits are a major source of food over in England. They've been eating them for centuries and centuries. But the only question is a very small one: is that is there any conflict with federal inspection law on this?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Black. Originally, when we started looking into it, we were trying to figure out rabbits fall into this weird quandary where the way they were listed as amenable species, which is basically wild game at first, and we're trying to fix it to call it a farm-raised rabbit, as regular livestock would. So they kind of fell into the gray zone. So we're trying to clarify that, and if we clarify that under this code section, the way we're doing it, then we fit into the exemption. My understanding is the same as we do with poultry.
Well, it's a good measure. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any witnesses. They couldn't get here, so.
I'm just curious, is there anybody from VDAX here maybe just could give us a little bit of, can we do this legally?
Mr. Chairman, I consulted VDAX with it. They helped me draft some of this stuff.
I think he's coming up from VDAX. Yeah, just for those of us who don't know anything about processing rabbits.
Certainly. I'm Charlie Broadus, Director of the Division of Animal and Food Industry Services with VDAX. Certainly, those are good questions. Rabbits are considered by federal law to be a non-amenable species, which means they can be inspected voluntarily, and that's how it can happen right now under what's called voluntary inspection that the processor would pay for. So that is an option. This would be another option that wouldn't be in conflict if the regulations are changed that would allow for the inspection to take place kind of by a different route.
Okay, I think that's important. Thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
telling us that. No other questions? I'm sorry, Senator Evan.
Yes, Senator Reeves had referenced just one inspector in Blacksburg. What does it mean that right now, if you have these smaller rabbit producing facilities or farms, what does that mean? You have to wait a long time for the one inspector in the state?
So you have to pay $40 an hour, including travel to personally, I'm just going to read the notes, to personally witness the processing of every rabbit. But then with the budget cuts, there aren't enough USDA inspectors in their area. So the closest rabbit inspector is near Blacksburg. So that farmer would have to pay that inspector $40 an hour to drive all the way up to Northern Virginia, where this specific farm is, at $40 an hour. It's not profitable. The amount of money that they make off of every rabbit, $4 from the restaurants and about $3 in the animals themselves as they sell a rabbit. It's about their profit margin. So it's non-profitable for them to do it.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Evans.
Just one follow-up. Does that mean that every single time they slaughter a rabbit, they have to wait for an inspector?
That is correct.
Move to report.
Wait 1 second. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition to this? Then I think we'll entertain your motion, Senator Evans. Is there a second? All right, motion to report properly seconded. Clerk, would you please open the roll? All right. Senator Reeves, you got your bill. Thank you. Close the
15
roll,
ayes,
clerk.
0 nays.
Senator Peake, I think you're next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
Doing well. How about you?
Great, great.
Which one would you like to take first? You got a slew of bills.
I've only got three of them, Mr. Chairman. Let's start with my first one that was the most inartfully one that was drawn. The marijuana bill, 333. I have discussed with Farm Bureau and some other folks some issues with this bill, and I have spoken with Senator Dance, and she has
Not marijuana. Senator Peake, I'm curious now. Now, hemp is not actually marijuana, right?
That's right.
All right, I just want to make sure that, because if not,
That's what the state police were telling me.
Yeah,
I've got
somebody's been
marijuana
telling
on my
me
mind.
some
Yeah,
false
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
if it is.
Sorry,
So I just want to make sure I understand here.
As I was coming in, the state police were telling me they couldn't tell my hemp from the marijuana, and I got it on my mind. Excuse me. Thank you, Senator Obenchain.
Not yours personally, but your
Yeah,
bills, right?
yeah, the bill.
Does he need some Cheetos or something to work that through?
Something for the head.
They stopped me at the hall. I thought they were going to test me, but anyway. I've spoken with Senator Dance. She has most graciously allowed me to roll my hemp production bill into her hemp production bill.
Okay.
And so I would ask the committee to do that. And then when Senator Dance presents her bill, as chief co-patron, I will join with her.
All right, so you'd like to roll it in, be a chief co-patron with Senator Dance?
Yes, I would.
Is there a motion to that effect? So moved. Okay, motion properly seconded. Clerk,
Thank
can
you,
do
Senator
we have to vote
Dance.
on that? Yeah,
Hemp
I guess we
bill.
do have to vote on that, don't we?
Hemp bill.
Clerk, open the roll, please, to roll his in and joint chief co-patrons. We're live streaming. No, we'll roll in, then she'll present hers. We don't have to vote? All right.
No, you can roll it in then.
To roll it in and joint chief co-patrons, do we have to take a vote on that? I thought we did. Yeah, okay. His Senate Bill 333 into Senator Dance's, hold on, let me find that. I'll find it.
247.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Senate Bill
All right.
247.
Okay. Clerk, would you open the roll? Okay. You close the roll, and thank you, Senator Peake. That bill's taken care of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two other bills, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bills 340 and 344, which, if I must say so myself, are two excellent bills that I'm bringing before the committee today. These are two water bills, Mr. Chairman. And what has happened.
Let's take 340 first. How about that? Yes. You voted to roll it into Senator Dance's bill.
Okay.
When she presents, yeah.
Yes. They're companion bills, Mr. Chairman, so I'll speak to both at the, and then we can vote on them individually. What has happened is the EPA has proposed regulations on cutting ammonia and nitrogen in water. No other states have followed that proposal at this point. DEQ in Virginia has proposed following that regulation. And I'm bringing this on behalf, two counties in particular contacted me, Louisa and Goochland, saying this would be a tremendous concern. But in addition to localities, it also will affect private operations of water treatment facilities. Louisa alone was going to cost $3 million to update their treatment facility. Goochland was having similar concerns. And our understanding is that over $500 million to localities to meet these standards. And so I've brought these two bills to address that issue. I have two gentlemen that I would like to have speak on behalf of the bills. If that's appropriate.
Any question? Well, come on up, Chris, if you'd like. That's fine. Unless any members have questions of you before Chris wants to speak. Okay. All right. Come on up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. Chris Pomeroy, I represent the Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. And my usual role here is to speak on behalf of the larger utilities around the state. These are the ones that we've really leaned on to lead out on the Chesapeake Bay restoration efforts with the water quality improvement funding here in this building and local resources. We've met the Chesapeake Bay wastewater sector obligations ahead of schedule. It's been a tremendous success story. And in fact, the Wastewater Association is now focused on supporting agriculture and urban stormwater funding to help do that piece. However, our smaller members across, mostly across rural Virginia, frankly, and I'm joined by Pam Bauman, the Executive Director of the Louisa County Water Authority today, who was the President of the Rural Water Association. There's another similar issue out there that we're catching in an early phase that's very substantial financial undertaking that we think raises important prioritization questions for future investment in Virginia. And we're really asking a prioritization question through this bill. The ammonia reduction has not been adopted by any further ammonia reduction. We have a 1999 standard in place which is protecting fish and is providing some level of protection to snails and mussels. The EPA standard that was mentioned is for added protection for snails and mussels. And we commissioned an engineering study to try to understand this early. The engineer, reputable national engineer, identified a cost impact in the $500 million range, affecting 590 smaller wastewater plants all across the state, not just in the Bay region. The Department of Planning and Budget more or less agrees with us, identifying some 300 and something facilities affected. So whatever the number, it's a statewide impact with our smaller facilities. The nature of the bills is to ask whether and when this undertaking should proceed at the considerable expense in our smaller facilities, not just public, but any private facilities as well, to further reduce ammonia, which hasn't been thought to be a great problem until EPA just brought it forward in terms of a new national guidance.
Chris, do we have any choice in whether or not we have to undertake it? Is it more a matter of timing, or do we actually have a choice as to whether or not it has to be done?
I think in the long run, it's more a matter of timing. The technical people tell me they have no technical quarrel with the recommendation from EPA, so it's a prioritization issue. I do a lot of work with utilities in the state of Maryland, and the Maryland agency is not proceeding with this at this time. The neighboring states are not at this time. So the nature of the bills is to allow us to focus available resources on the Chesapeake Bay progress and have this be a later priority for another time. That's the gist of it. There are others here who can speak to particular utility impacts, but I was asked to come explain the broader policy element.
Are there any questions for Chris Pomeroy?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Chris. At this time, would most of the concern be in the James River Basin? Is that where most of the ammonia issues are at?
Yeah, it's really it's a statewide concern from the owner's perspective, because if nothing is done, the way this would work is the Water Control Board would adopt this EPA guidance during calendar year 2018, and the permits expire. They're just on a 5-year cycle. So all the construction would go on as the 5-year permits all come up. It's statewide.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up. Chris, my reason for asking the question, I just returned last week from a Chesapeake Bay Commission meeting with Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and the subject of ammonia in the James River was something that was discussed, but it seemed like it was something very preliminary that was being hashed out as far as where we go with this.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I believe the senator is referring to the nutrient issue called chlorophyll, which is unique to the James River, where we think by mistake EPA made the James River, despite its lack of impact on the main stem bay because it's so far south, the most stringently regulated basin in the entire Chesapeake Bay region. And there's been an ongoing reevaluation of all of that by DEQ. There's been a lot of, the General Assembly's invested $3 million in that study. The DEQ is working toward conclusion, and I believe that may be what the discussion was targeted toward. That's a different issue.
Right. Mr. Chairman, one follow-up question
Yes,
on that.
Senator
Then would it be then the intent of this legislation is basically to require DEQ to focus on cost-effective strategies in this discussion as opposed to just adopting the standard and then imposing the costly processes that might evolve?
That's right. There'd be a temporary deferral to allow the continued focus on the bay-wide nutrients.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Black.
First, I apologize for not using the PDF bill on this. I'm really just looking at the summary that's listed here, but it says that it's designed to prioritize technologies to reduce ammonia. And then later on, it says the bill places certain limitations on grants to reduce ammonia. It seems to be saying one thing and then saying the opposite. But I gather the gist, the goal is to reduce ammonia. Is that generally correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yes, Senator Black. The goal is to reduce ammonia over time, including where appropriate and subject to appropriations in the funding bill of the two bills with the Water Quality Improvement Fund. The types of projects are eligible but not a priority, and this would call them out by name
And
as a
Mr. Chairman,
potential priority.
and now ammonia is not a persistent type of agent like so many are. It tends to dissipate rather quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, I believe that's true.
And Mr. Chairman, and as I understood the introduction, we're talking about something that is very, very expensive to do if we decide to do it. So considering that it's not a persistent agent, it's not something that's going to accumulate and build up that we can't take some time to study, wouldn't we be better off to evaluate exactly where we stand before we commit ourselves to making a very large expenditure of funds?
Yeah, I believe the wastewater industry would agree with that assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? Any other questions for Chris? Do you have any other witnesses, Senator Peak?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I forget, we do have a line item amendment. Did we submit? We do have submitted a line item amendment, which was technical in nature, not changing the.
Yeah, I can go ahead and read, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
So on line 51, please restore the including that was stricken and strike the comma on 52 so that it will read water quality improvements including cost-effective technologies. And the second line amendment is on line 53. Strike everything following ammonia through line 55 additional treatment facilities so that will read nitrogen containing ammonia in order to meet the requirements.
And that's 340, and we also have one on 344.
We'll do that one separately, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody have those amendments? Is there a motion for those amendments? Voice vote, okay. Motion properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Senator Peak, you have other witnesses?
Yes. Come.
Hi, my name is Pam Bachman. I'm the General Manager of Louisa County Water Authority, and I'm also the President of Virginia Rural Water. A small utility is defined as 10,000 or less connections, but you also have to consider that there are smaller communities with maybe 100 or 50 connections, schools, and industrial facilities. Louisa County has been very proactive we're in the Chesapeake Bay, so we have to follow those regulations, but very, very proactive in upgrading our facilities. We have removed the ammonia nitrogen down to 97% removal. The new regulation would have us remove it even further at a significant cost for very few customers. We can meet that lower rate that they're proposing for us, in 8 to 9 months out of the year, but 3 to 4 months out of the year when it's colder, it's a little bit more difficult to remove. As a local, very small utility, I'm having a difficult time explaining to my citizens and my board why another $1 million upgrade plus $30,000 a year in operating costs will benefit for a very small 1 to 2% removal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Eric Gregory. On behalf of
afternoon.
King George County, good afternoon. Thank you for hearing us out. We very much appreciate Senator Peake's sponsorship of this bill and are in full support of both bills. They would provide some relief to especially small localities and small water systems in the Commonwealth, and we ask you to support it and pass it. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassy, Virginia Manufacturers Association. We have facilities in every jurisdiction in the Commonwealth. In fact, most of our facilities are in small rural communities. The outsized impact that this would have if we get too far ahead over our skis, so to speak, could be substantial. I think Senator Black stated it well. We want to get it right. We also realize that working with our POTWs in hand and making sure that we've got, they understand us and we understand the timelines for investments. That's important. One thing I will make a point on, that when you look at the food and beverage industry, the plastics industry, and the chemical industry, those are our 4 fastest growing manufacturing sectors. They're all very, very affected by ammonia standards. So this is something we want to make sure we get right and in a right timely basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of Senator Peake's bill? Bills? I guess we're. Would you like to speak in favor? We'd love to have you. Come on up and speak. Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman. Chris McDonald, Virginia Association of Counties. We just wanted to, for the enumerated reasons from Mr. Pomeroy, support this legislation as well.
Thank you. Okay, is there, before I, come on up.
Mr. Chairman, Eldon James on behalf of the localities of North Central Virginia Planning District 16 and 9, which includes King George, but also Augusta County and Roanoke County. Just want to emphasize one point. What you have from EPA is guidance, not a rule. And the prioritization is we want to stay focused on the Chesapeake Bay mandates and rules.
Thank you. If there's no one else who'd like to speak in favor, before we go to opposition, if you don't mind, and I hate to put you on the spot, Dave, but DEQ have anything to say about this? It's just because I respect your opinion so much. I'd like to hear from you.
You'll be, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You'll be stunned to know that DEQ has no position on this bill, but I'll be happy to answer any substantive questions you may want to ask.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for David? Senator Hanger.
Well, I would ask one, is it a good idea?
Let me say that in our triennial review, which this is about prioritization and the two bills are sort of run together, we have acknowledged and understood that that there are significant cost implications to this new standard. And as Chris Pomeroy said, I've not heard any argument about the science behind the standard, but the issue has just been significant implementation concerns. We actually recommended to the Water Control Board maybe within the last year that we slow down a little bit. We're still moving along, and that is a concern. But we do acknowledge that there are cost implications that have to be a part of any implementation that would happen here, because you clearly can't upgrade that many points instantaneously. So we've got this problem that the science I think is pretty well settled, and how do we implement that in a way that's reasonable.
And if you can't answer this, you can't answer it, David. But I think I understand the gist of this bill, and I think we're leaning towards removing this ammonia. So this is just trying to get to the most effective, efficient way and prioritize this sort of thing. Is there any sort of immediate or exigent circumstances where we just need to push forward before we actually know the best way to do it or the most cost-effective way to do it?
I think that in terms of timing, and again, we're sort of talking a little bit about both of his bills, 340 and 344. I think in terms of timing, we need to figure out how can it reasonably rolled out, and the wild card is water quality standards are under EPA purview, and at some point EPA can lower the hammer, and so we have to stay in communications with EPA about whatever strategies we have as well. The statement was made that other states aren't moving. I think other states are moving. It is absolutely the case that we are a little bit ahead of the other states, and that's partially, I think, because our triennial review came up maybe at a different time, perhaps. But again, the Water Control Board last year was very mindful of the fact that there were implementation concerns, and we wanted to take time to evaluate those, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, anybody else have questions for David? Okay, if there are no questions for David, the Senator Peak, then we would offer, is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Adrienne Catul. I'm with the James River Association. I am not in opposition to SB 340, but since we're talking about SB 344 at the same time, we are in opposition to that bill. Our organization has been a member of the committee looking at the water quality standards as a part of the triennial review that Mr. Paylor just discussed. We believe that DEQ is doing a good job of looking at those standards, taking into account the views of all of the stakeholders, and we believe that that process should be allowed to continue on as it has been moving forward now, and that the State Water Control Board and the department are doing a good job in that effort. And we would ask that you vote against this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Peggy Sander from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I, too, have no objections to 1340. I think there's recognition both in the bill and in the comments of the patron and others that it's important to prioritize and continue the really successful work of the Commonwealth in bay restoration, particularly that's been exemplified by the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, which this body and DEQ and the State Water Control Board have ensured progressed in a rational, thoughtful, careful way over more than a 15-year period. It's that rational, thoughtful, steady way that I think is appropriate here. I think that's, my understanding is that's what the patron is looking for, and I respect that. My trouble is with 1344. I'm a little bit concerned about the idea that Virginia, which has an extremely competent Department of Environmental Quality, they have run this program very well. I'm not sure it's the wisest thing that our schedule in approving and implementing these new standards should be based on what other states are doing, which I think 1344 does. Again, I don't think it's the intent that we follow along behind others, but I'm not sure that's the appropriate metric to gauge how we should move forward. Again, I think this is a thoughtful approach on a complicated issue, but I think the Commonwealth has a lot of experience in figuring out how to develop and implement these tough things over a period of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hanger.
I move to report Senate Bill 340 as amended.
Okay. Senate Bill 340 properly moved, properly seconded. Clerk, please open the roll. Okay. Close the roll. Senator Peak, you got that one?
15 ayes, 0 nays.
Anything you want to add on 344 before we go to that?
No, we're fine with 344. Correct. Do we?
You want to make any added comments?
No added
I think
comments.
everybody has addressed them as companion bills, but just giving you that opportunity.
Nothing else.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion on Senate Bill 344?
Mr. Chairman,
Before we do that, I'm reminded that Senator Peake said there was an amendment for 344. Is that correct? Or did we report all the amendments?
There, only 340, Mr. Chairman.
Only,
So
no amendment,
344 we're
okay.
leaving.
There is a.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Senator
Can I
Martin.
just speak to the bill for just a moment, 344?
There's a motion, properly seconded, on the floor, but absolutely, you can, if it.
Thank you,
discuss
Mr.
that.
Chairman. I'm just concerned, as are the Chesapeake Bay folks, that we're hitching our wagon to a number of other states to have to go first. Puts us in a situation where we can't do what may be appropriate because we have to wait for other states to act. That just does not make any sense to me that we do that. We ought to make determinations based on the merits and not on which of our sister states go first. And I would oppose the bill.
Yeah, just to associate myself with what Senator Marsden said, but also just to point out to the committee, there are 13 other states in Regions 3 and 4 plus the District of Columbia. So this is just, you know, I don't know why we would think that we can't do something better than these other states before waiting on all 13, that we're not capable of, even if it's a few years. So with that, I move to PBI the bill, or was it? Okay.
Okay, there's no further discussion. There is a motion properly seconded. Clerk, open the roll. Your bill reports 8-7, Senator Peake. You're going to have to explain that on the floor. Thank you. Okay, I think that's all the patrons. Everybody else is on the committee. Senator Stanley, and Senator Stanley, if you have no objection, I've got the same bill that you have, and I'd like to roll my Senate Bill 212 into your Senate Bill 32. Is there a second on that? Second. Motion properly seconded to roll Senate Bill 212 into Senate Bill 32. Clerk, can you open the roll? Thank you. Can you close the roll? Oh, Jennifer, you didn't vote. Is it important to you? Yes, okay. We can strike it and vote again. Look, Jennifer, we know you're not cruel to animals. Let's get you in the affirmative. All right, close the roll. Thank you. All right, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'd like, we can take that one up first.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a redo of Senate Bill 700, which was reported out of this committee and on to Finance Committee. It made it all the way over to the House and then somehow didn't get past there very far. But ladies and gentlemen, what this does is it creates an animal cruelty conviction list that would be maintained by the state police. I've talked with my local law enforcement and other sheriff's department, and we believe that, quite frankly, those persons that commit crimes, the most heinous crimes against animals, are 10 times more likely to commit an act of violence against a human being. So law enforcement finds it to be a very effective tool. But more importantly, animal shelters and rescue groups should have this information in front of them so that they can make determinations on whether to release for adoption of these animals, these cats and dogs that they have, to people, knowing that those people are not and have not been convicted of the most serious offenses against animals. This would allow them to check the background of potential adopters. It also would allow the public to use the list to check the background of pet sitters, dog walkers, kennel, daycare attendants, and trainers. It is not a list that is different in the sense of, or the same in the sense of what we do for sex offenders. This is merely a public database that is maintained for what is otherwise public record held in each county for those convictions. If you're convicted of a cruelty to animals in Franklin County, that is maintained on our court's website. But it is hard and difficult, near to impossible, for whether it be even law enforcement or, more importantly, to the animal shelters and rescuers to search all of the county, cities, and towns in Virginia, and not all of them have that information publicly available on the internet. So what I also have is I have an amendment to this. Sorry. The amendment is a simple amendment, Mr. Chairman, that changes the time in which the state police would have to prepare this list from 2020 to 2021.
Mr. Chairman.
So you would scratch on line 15, 20, and put in 21? Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
And I so move that amendment.
Is there a second? Second. Motion properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Bill's amended.
Now, the reason for that, too, is it also gives us plenty of time to try to coordinate this list and also not have to worry about the cost of that potentially in this biennium. More importantly, I think what we can do is streamline the process by which it won't cost or have any economic or fiscal impact to the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Senator Stanley, I will tell you that after my discussions with some folks, not the least of which was the state police, it became very apparent to me that the $50 amount was not going to self-fund this thing.
Right.
And so this bill, if it's favorably acted upon by the committee, will have to be re-referred to Senate Finance anyway, and I expect you're going to have to work on that aspect.
That's correct. That's correct.
All right, any questions for Senator Stanley?
Yes.
Senator Evans.
Mr. Chairman, I support the bill. I think it's a great bill, but I was wondering, it says that the list, you get off the list 15 years after you commit this act against an animal. Is that to make it easier to pass, or is that what they do in other states? Because depending what the act is, I think you should be on there so you can never adopt another animal.
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying, while I don't disagree with you, that has been the model of these animal abuser registry lists. It gives an opportunity to people to rehabilitate themselves. You know, we are a country of second chances, and we want redemption. And what we hope is that that may be an act, but not who the person is. It doesn't mean necessarily that it is in those occasions, but for those that have no further violations of law, and I believe it's no felony conviction offense listed in the section, that they are given then maybe the opportunity, which would otherwise perhaps hinder them from maybe adopting an animal if they.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peterson.
Yeah. Senator Stanley, I noticed that your bill cross-references 3.2-6570, which is the statute on cruelty to animals. And I actually just picked it up and I'm reading through it. And among other things, it talks about depriving an animal of necessary food, drink, or shelter, or emergency vet treatment.
Right.
And it also talks about roping, lassoing, or otherwise obstructing or interfering with one or more legs of an equine, I guess it'd be a horse, in order to intentionally cause it to trip.
That was that was horse tripping. That was Senator Vogel's bill.
Okay. So I guess my point is that 3.2-6570, it's not just, I mean, it's called cruelty to animals, but I think you'd agree with me that there are kind of degrees of separation here. Is it your intention that every single act under 3.2-6570 would qualify, or just, I mean, 3.2-6570 almost appears to me to be pretty much every single offense, including not sufficiently caring for your pet.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying yes.
Okay.
Senator Peterson, did that answer your question?
Well, if, can I have?
May not satisfy you, but it doesn't answer
May not
your question.
I mean, the obvious corollary is registered sex offenders. And we've tried to, at least some of us have, to say, not everyone who's convicted of a crime should be a registered sex offender.
Sure.
Okay, we've tried to say there's a difference between sending somebody a picture versus actually having some malicious intent. And I guess my question, Senator Stanley, is there any way to kind of, or is there any level of separation between the truly heinous versus just the stupid, negligent, whatever you want to call it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying, I think if you see the list, I know 6570 can be comprehensive in its scope, can go outside of the dogs and cats issue, and you know, there are cruelty to animals that occur to horses as well. We're only talking usually, and horse kind of falls in between of a companion animal. To my daughter, the horse is a companion animal, like a dog. But I understand what you're saying there. With regard to that, if you look at that, animal fighting, you know, which we obviously understand the cruel nature and the depravity that comes with it for someone who is engaging in dog fighting or using a dog as bait.
Senator Stanley.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we've got an answer up here.
Scott, I
It
think
only-
helped us out. It only applies to
Only applies
felony
to felonies.
violations. So-
Yes, yes, it's only
So I think that
All right.
helps Senator Peterson out.
That helps.
Those are only the
Oh, I'm
most
sorry, I
serious.
misunderstood.
The most serious crimes.
My fault, Mr. Judge, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. I got to get used to being here.
Any other questions for Senator Stanley?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
Uh,
It's
thank-
taken me a while to get used to finding you.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
these various rows.
Same
I
thing here.
apologize.
I know.
Because they're behind us when you're standing here.
Right.
Senator Stanley, other than the sex offender registry, and then if we pass this, are there any other registries for individuals convicted of crimes?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentlelady by saying I'm not aware that there would be any other list for convictions of crimes. I mean, we have barrier crimes and those. I don't know that there's a registry maintained to the degree that this would be maintained. But
So I think
the dangerous dog registry I meant to say.
Okay.
He's hoping to get a dog registered.
Thank you, Sharon.
Is that
Answer
all
by
you have,
Sharon.
Senator McClellan?
Yeah, but
You have a
I'd like to,
follow-up?
well, I'd like to make a comment. I guess I'm going to vote for this because I do agree that cruelty to animals is usually, if not a prelude, at least a sign that someone's going to escalate to hurt a human. But I do find it very interesting that we are focusing to create a registry for cruelty to animals, and yet people can be cruel to children and hurt children, and no one, we don't have a registry for that. And I have a little bit of discomfort. While I love animals, I love my dog as if he were my child. I was on the board of the SPCA. I feel a little bit uncomfortable raising animals above children. But again, I recognize that this could identify some people who might escalate to hurt a child or someone else.
Mr. Chairman, if I may answer the gentlelady, I would agree with you, and I don't think this list attempts to put anything with regard to cruelty to animals or harm to animals above cruelty or harm to children or any other human being. I don't think that's the purpose of this. This is twofold: to create a tool for law enforcement and also to create a tool for those that are in the business of rescuing animals and then finding forever homes for them. That is a very, if you know, that is a tough job that is probably not paid for and takes a lot of time. In order to try to find those forever homes, you have to make judgments on whether the person that comes and is willing to adopt that child is suitable for adoption. One of the considerations, it's not a bar to it or a barrier to it, but one of the considerations that should always be there is that this information is before the adopter about the adoptee, and that they can make a decision based on that information in front of them. And so that's the purpose of the bill. But I do agree with you that this does not place that above that.
Any other questions for Senator Stanley? If not, is there any opposition for this bill? Is there any support for this bill? Everybody just ambivalent. Please come up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Sharon Quillen Adams, Director of the Virginia Alliance for Animal Shelters. We support this bill. We understand the cost concerns, and they have been the concerns over many years with regard to this. If those can be worked out, however, we think it's an asset. And may I was around in '99 when we created the cruelty statute, and we created that, and this body was wise enough to create it for animals because we understood the correlation that you're talking about, Senator McClellan, between animal cruelty, domestic violence, and child abuse. So we see this as a tool in that regard as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Paulette Dean, Director of the Danville Area Humane Society, as well as the court-appointed humane investigator in Danville and Pennsylvania County. We are in support of this bill. As a humane investigator, the information would be very helpful. And by the way, Senator McClellan, I have turned people down for adoptions when I have seen them hurt their child in the parking lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Fascini, and I operate 2 independent pet stores. As a pet store operator, this would be a very valuable tool for us to screen potential candidates for adoption.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, members of the committee. I am Tabitha Treelor, the Director of Communications for the Richmond SPCA, speaking today on behalf of the Virginia Federation of Humane Societies, which asks for your support of Senator Stanley's bill. Having an animal cruelty conviction list serves citizens who regularly hire pet caretakers, sitters, and dog walkers for their beloved pets, and also allows shelters to check the background of potential adopters. Requiring offenders to pay a fee, although we've talked about the self-funding mechanism, we believe that could be further facilitating this bill, and ask that you vote in favor of it.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? All right, if there's no one else to speak, a motion is in order on this bill, and I'll remind the members that if you are inclined to move this bill be reported, it needs to be re-referred to Senate Finance Committee. Excuse me? No, it doesn't need to go to.
Vote for me, yes.
It does not need to go to courts that I can see, just finance, I think. Do you agree with that, Mr. Chairman of Courts? I think the proper motion is finance. All right, motion properly supported. Clerk, would you please open the roll?
Oh, I voted right. Good. Oh, we do? Oh, sweet. There you go. Perfect.
15 ayes, no nays.
Is this like your first bill you ever got out unanimously, Senator Stanley?
Probably, yes. In my 9 years of being here, you're exactly correct.
Senator Stanley, I must warn you, you still have a long way to go.
I know there's a.
Okay, what's your next bill?
It's scary. Now, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if you don't mind, I've had some people who have approached me, and I'd like to, I'm not one, and I understand we're trying to get some of these things done, but on SB 175, which is the Notice of Intent to Euthanize, this bill we filed because it had been a bill that I'd filed before. It was called Molly's Bill. It got out of this committee, but it has been filed in the House, and so that's why we refiled this. Just it wasn't our intent necessarily, but I want to talk to some of the stakeholders. Mr. Chairman, if you would give me the leeway just to have a week, I'd appreciate it, and I'm sorry, sir. And might result. I know I'm getting the look, sir. It just came up, and I don't want to not have those people have a seat at the table in determining the fate of this bill.
Senator Stanley, not that I want to be difficult, but we've sort of I've received my own admonishment and trying to get these things done. But yes, I've probably got a lot of stakeholders in the room, and it's a shame you all couldn't have discussed it before. But
and we just didn't have the time, and I want to give them, with all due respect, and
we can do another week.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
But we're going to have to do it next week.
Yes, sir. No question. Or I will carry the bill over for the year.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. The final one is with my co-counsel, Senator Sturtevant. If you don't mind, Senate Bill 28. And there's an amendment. There's an amendment in the form of substitute, in the nature of substitute meat.
You want to? Oh, you need to do yours.
It's a line amendment.
All right, I'm sorry.
Is it this one, Meach?
Do you want me to interrupt him and let you do you?
Yeah. Okay, I think we're right. It just makes subsection A.
Please, Scott.
Mr. Chairman, the line amendment on Senate Bill 28 would strike on line 25 at the beginning of the line all of the text through line 30, and then on line 32 we would change the word subsection to the word section. And then up above on line 25, we would insert this text. No state general funds shall be appropriated to and in turn expended by any organization, whether public or private, for the purpose of carrying out any medically unnecessary scientific or medical research on an animal subject that causes significant pain or distress to the animal subject.
Would you report that last sentence one more time for everybody, please, Scott?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. On line 25, the amendment would insert this text. No state general funds shall be appropriated to and in turn expended by any organization, whether public or private, for the purpose of carrying out any medically unnecessary scientific or medical research on an animal subject that causes significant pain or distress to the animal subject.
All right, that's your amendment?
That is my amendment. I so
Can
move.
I have a motion on that amendment?
I so move.
On those amendments? Is there a second? Did I hear a second? Thank you.
Thanks,
Motion-
guys.
Motion properly seconded for the amendments as reported by Scott. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right, now what does your bill do?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me just explain the amendment. We had two sections, A and B. Basically, this combines A and B into A. We've been working, both Senator Sturtevant and I have been working on this bill and since the summertime. It is now in the form where we can agree to where we are, and also with some of our research institutions of higher learning, Virginia Tech, VCU, with a clearer understanding of exactly what we're trying to do. This is a policy statement, which this state will make, that we are not going to use taxpayer money. That is, those taxpayers, those citizens that pay taxes in the Commonwealth of Virginia, to conduct medically unnecessary experiments on dogs and cats where those dogs and cats are put in severe distress. Ladies and gentlemen, you may recall this summer, if you saw the news, that in the VA McGuire Medical Center, painful dog experiments where the dogs were subjected to cruel and unusual and depraved pain for long periods of time, under the guise of medical science and advancement in research. This was exposed by local news media, and at the time, both Senator Sturtevant and I saw it, were appalled by that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have over 75% of members of the Commonwealth of Virginia, our citizens, own either a dog or a cat. Over 60% believe that they're a member of their family. This bill does not eliminate that. This is not what this bill does. It does not eliminate those experiments from happening. What it says is we will not allow the appropriation and the disbursement of state taxpayer money from the general fund to go to the costs of conducting these experiments. I know of no greater statement that we can make in the 21st century than this. And so that's the bill in a nutshell. Sir.
Thank you. Any questions of Senator Stanley?
Yeah, I've got one or two.
Mr. Chairman?
Who was first? I think Senator Overchain was first.
Okay.
Senator Morrison.
So-
Senator Overchain.
So, medically unnecessary for whom? For the animal?
Mr. Chairman, I answer the gentleman by saying on line 19, medically unnecessary is defined. And it's defined as being not carried out solely for the better health, welfare, or safety of the animal subject.
Right, let's, and just for
And an animal subject is
an
defined as dog or
example,
cat.
let's just say, turn the clock back and say we haven't established a process for perfecting valve transplants, aortic valve transplants. And the only way to do it is through testing, and it's going to save thousands of human lives. Would this have prevented the testing of valve transplants?
No. Mr. Chairman, I answered the gentleman by saying no, it would not.
Why
This
not?
targets the worst of those, of the categories of experiments that cause significant pain and stress, not that.
But doesn't that cause pain and distress? The surgery, the recovery, the process of cracking the chest cavity of the animal subject?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying I am not a doctor, so I cannot tell you what the level of pain. I'd think that hurt me if you did it to me. But the USDA requires research facilities to categorize levels of pain factors in the type of research that's conducted on animals. So there are some controls that do occur in determining that level of pain that you're talking about, and whether then that would be allowed in an experimentation setting with regard to an animal such as a dog.
Can you tell me, Mr. Chairman, can you tell me with any level of confidence that this wouldn't prevent testing of future procedures that may save thousands or millions of human lives?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying what this bill does is it prevents taxpayer money from being appropriated and expended. It does not prevent private funds, private monies, private foundations utilizing private funds and monies from doing those type of experiments which you describe that may occur in the future that might save a life. This is just throwing down a marker basically that says that we're not going to use taxpayer money for what I would consider a deeply unethical and immoral practice.
Mr. Chairman, look, I want to protect animals. I don't want to needlessly inflict pain. I agree in principle with much of the patron's goals, but I am concerned. We have medical colleges and universities in Virginia that are taxpayer funded. We have programs that are taxpayer funded, and we've got obligations. If we have an opportunity through the taxpayer funded research to save thousands of lives, is it not possible to modify this to take that into account?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying a couple things. Number one, we have worked on in the adopted the amendment which was adopted. The line amendments were worked on with the colleges and universities that conduct experiments in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I think that you will find that if their representatives are in attendance today, that they will have no objection to what we're doing here. Use of animals in testing is becoming a thing of the past.
Mr. Chairman,
Public opinion is moving sharply against it, I can tell you that. But number two, Mr. Chairman, I would say that if my friend, the senator, reads line 22, it says any pain, significant pain or distress is defined to mean any pain or distress caused by a procedure or condition classified under pain and distress category E. Category E by the United States Department of Agriculture is unrelieved. I believe Senator Sturtevant would even have a better definition. Am I not correct on that?
We can pull up the exact language, Mr. Chairman, but the Category E experiments are the so-called maximum pain experiments where there is not relief provided to the animal. These are the type of experiments that led to this bill, the experiments that were being done at the McGuire VA hospital, where perfectly healthy dogs had heart attacks induced in order to eventually study their hearts after they were harvested, after the dogs were euthanized. This is different than experiments where the pain relief is given to the animal. This bill seeks to prohibit only state funds for only those tests that inflict the maximum level of pain, that Category E level of testing.
Cheney, you finished? I think Senator Marsden was next, Senator Evan.
I believe Senator Eben has done quicker research on the
Okay.
dreaded Category
Senator
E,
Eben.
and he can report.
Senator Evan.
Yeah, I was just looking up on the USDA Pain and Distress Animals website for research, and it says Category E is for procedures that are not relieved with anesthetics, analgesics, or tranquilizer drugs. Withholding anesthesia or analgesia must be scientific. It goes further into it. It says food or water deprivation beyond that necessary for ordinary pre-surgical preparation, electrical shock stimulation, but then you have these other categories, B, C, and D, that seem to me to allow for a lot of research. I'm not a scientist, and I wish I showed this to my legislative aide who is, but it seems to me you could probably do a lot with it from a layman's looking at this.
Okay. Any other questions for Senator Stanley?
I got a couple.
Senator Peterson.
Senator Stanley, what's the idea? Who's going to make this judgment about what is or is not medically necessary? Is that going to be a circuit court judge? And who makes that determination? You can have an expert witness that's going to come on and say what's medically necessary or unnecessary.
Mr. Chairman, I would answer the gentleman, but I would say it comes in two varieties. One is a civil penalty, which is found in 31 and 32. And I had discussions with the Department of Health, and we had those, and those probably will be more developed by them, because this falls under the Department of Health code section. And so that really kind of attends to this. The second thing, though, is sometimes it's all through the eye of the beholder as to determine that. However, as I told you, every USDA research facility must categorize the level of pain. So therefore, before it conducts the research on animals, it must categorize, assess, and basically make disclosures and get permissions that run up even to the federal level. And that's why Senator Eben pointed out the categories of pain, the A, B, C, D, and E, and that's why we specifically attack one level, is that is really a predetermination, not a post-determination,
Okay.
to whether the experiment is worthy and whether it is allowed.
Okay, but you're avoiding my question, Counselor.
I'm not.
All right. Who's the fact finder?
Glenn is avoiding your
Okay,
question.
there we go. Who's the
didn't
fact
answer.
finder, and what is the standard of proof? I mean, who makes this decision as to what's medically necessary and what's medically unnecessary? Someone's going to have to make a decision.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, I think that comes into play specifically with regard to what the context you're asking about is in line 3132. It says, in addition to any other penalty provided by law, any person violating the provisions of the subsection shall be liable for a civil penalty in an amount not to exceed $50,000 for each incident.
So you'd sue somebody, and
I think that.
so I, as a private citizen, would file suit against Eastern
Well, somebody
Virginia
would-
Medical School, or
There certainly have to be, a standing determination there, but
I was like, the last time I checked, animals can't sue people.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Marsden.
Thank you. I think in answer to Senator Peterson's concerns, the company that I've done work with, even in social science research, there's a review board as to the ethics and the appropriateness of the research and how it's going to treat its subjects. And I think anything done along these lines would involve an independent review board going through it to determine whether it met the standards. And I think any state group who was looking at doing some of this research, college or university, would establish that board to make that determination independently of the people actually doing the research to determine whether they could proceed, and this state law would be instructive.
Mr. Chairman, I would also follow what Senator Marsden says by, and I'm reminded by someone here that universities and those type of things where this type of research it occurs, form animal care committees that look at this beforehand and even during and even post-mortem to make sure that they're complying and that these are reasonable experiments that do not violate USDA or any other law for that matter. So hopefully that answers my otherwise artful dodge of the senator from Fairfax City.
Senator Stanley, have you got any witnesses, maybe like some of these research folks who'd like to speak to this? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this?
Mr. Chairman, I would hope that maybe our medical schools and research facilities would be represented and would share a little bit with us as well.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your opportunity to weigh in on this issue. My name is Justin Goodman, and I'm the Vice President of a 400,000-member taxpayer watchdog group called the White Coat Waste Project. And on behalf of our 10,000 members here in Virginia, we applaud Senator Stanley and Sturtevant for introducing this important legislation and offer our strong support for this thoughtful, narrowly crafted, common sense bill to stop wasteful government spending on maximum pain experiments on cats and dogs. I just want to note the widespread bipartisan support for this initiative, in addition to the institutions, including VCU and Tech, that have given the green light for this to advance, who do conduct experiments on animals extensively, receive extensive money federally and privately for this research, and they have agreed to let this move forward. 75% of Americans support this effort. The Times Dispatch editorial board is endorsing this bill. The Richmond SPCA is endorsing this bill. U.S. House of Representatives, led by Dave Bratt, Tom Garrett, Barbara Comstock, and Don Beyer, introduced and passed unanimously legislation through the House of Representatives this summer to do the exact same thing as this. So there's extensive support both on local level.
That list.
I try to make it bipartisan and please everybody, but so there's extensive support both here in Virginia from medical institutions that are state funded here. This is very narrowly crafted. Institutions themselves will determine what category the experiments fall into. They can approve them, they can conduct them, they can take, well, soon they won't be able to anymore, federal money, but they could take private money, they can conduct whatever they want. This is an issue of spending taxpayer money. And again, when I say narrowly crafted, the Richmond VA is the only institution in recent history that has been conducting column E experiments, these maximum pain experiments on cats and dogs. They are currently the only one doing it. So this only affects the Richmond VA. It doesn't affect any other institution. And again, the House of Representatives has also voted unanimously to cut federal funding to the Richmond VA for the same thing. So this is, again, this is like the most extreme, painful, narrowly crafted bill. It will not affect any research. It will not ban any research. From our perspective, we are a liberty group. We are not an animal rights group. We are not an animal welfare group. Our concern is that taxpayers are being forced to pay for something that 3/4 of Virginians that oppose. Get the money from the private sector. We don't care. We just want to take it off taxpayers' back and avoid them being forced to pay for something they don't want to. We strongly support this legislation and hope you'll consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'm Matt Gray. I'm the Virginia State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. I'd like to associate myself with Mr. Goodman's statement. We're grateful to Senator Sturtevant and to Senator Stanley, and we support the bill.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, Tabitha Treelor. I'm speaking on behalf of the Richmond SPCA and the Virginia Federation of Humane Societies, both of which are asking you to support this bill, and we join with those ahead of us in thanking both of the senators for introducing it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, members of the committee, Annie Morris with BCU. We do believe, we want to thank the senator first for working with us on this piece of legislation. We do believe we've come to what I would call a workable compromise. So.
Okay. May I?
Ashley
Senator
Myers Hood
Obenshain.
with the University of Virginia. We concur with the Virginia Commonwealth University.
Well, let me ask both UVA and VCU, do you support this?
You can. Just kidding.
We do not oppose it. That's what I would say. We
Do
remain
you support
neutral.
it?
We
Yes or
remain neutral
no?
on the bill.
Do you support it? Yes or no?
No.
UVA?
Neutral.
Neutral. Do you support it? Yes or no?
We currently do not do
Thank you.
research that's category E. We do not know what we might do in the future.
So you do not currently support this bill?
We are neutral on the bill.
I think they've answered the question, Senator Obenshain. Thank you all. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Todd Woodson, and I'm representing the Richmond Animal Advocacy Alliance. Just a couple of points I want to make. Aspirin is deadly to cats. The physiology of animals is very much different than people. And of course, before any drug can be legalized, it has to go before a human clinical trial. There are many, many technical advances that makes this type of experimentation really unnecessary in the extreme cases of unrelieved pain. And I thank Senator Sturtevant and Stanley, and I ask that you do pass this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Susan Seward with the Virginia Veterinary Medical Association. We do support the bill as amended, and while I'm not here to certainly speak for the vet school, we did do several calls with them. It is my understanding that they do not conduct Category E research at the vet school, and the vet school does have an animal care committee, which I believe most of the universities do as well, but I know the vet school does. So,
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this bill?
We stopped by your office. Yes, I did.
I wasn't there. You saw me in his office.
Mr. Chairman, Martha Moore, Virginia Farm Bureau.
we're not necessarily trying to kill the bill, but we do have some significant concerns with the definition of medically unnecessary. To put that in the code, you know, with regards to carrying out something solely for the better health, welfare, or safety of the animal subject. I know there's been a lot of talk about Category 3, which talks about significant pain or distress. I think people generally understand that. Our concern is putting this definition in the statute that can lead to other things, and you can build off of that. And so we just raised a concern. I know some of you have raised that, and we just wanted to bring that to your attention, that our concern is the precedent this might set of this definition and how it would apply for other things, because it would probably be referred to potentially down the road in other statutes.
You going to press that one too? Senator Obenchain?
Can I ask counsel a question? The first speaker indicated that this was the subject of congressional action that passed unanimously. Does that mean that this is unnecessary and we're preempted by federal law anyway?
No.
Mr. Chair, I believe that the federal legislation was only going to federal funds, and that this is going specifically to Virginia funds.
All right. State taxpayer from general funds. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, just briefly, where I differ in our respect.
You may after I call for anybody
Yes,
else who wants to speak in opposition.
Sorry,
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition? Okay, Senator Stanley, please.
Mr. Chairman, may it please the members of the committee to clarify, and I think the world of the Farm Bureau, we tailored this definition section very tight, because if they're concerned about medically unnecessary as defined for the better health, welfare, or safety of the animal subject, one only has to look above to note that the animal subject that is only being referenced to any attorney would is a dog or a cat, not a cow, not a dairy animal, not an animal, not a pig, not one used for livestock. So this is narrowly tailored just for dogs and cats. It defines medically unnecessary, and it defines medically unnecessary as it pertains to what animals indeed.
Senator Stanley, Scott brought up an interesting point. Your bill would actually penalize the General Assembly if the funds were appropriated. So I think we've got to figure out a way around that. I think Scott has it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm having only drafted the bill with Mr. Meacham.
Well, we could make you the representative of the General Assembly that gets penalized, actually.
Judge.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm amenable to whatever meets.
Let our council report an amendment to try to help you.
So we would have a line amendment on line 32, and after it says section, it would say the provisions of this section prohibiting the expending of state funds shall be liable for a civil penalty.
Yes. No objection.
So that it only applies to the prohibition against the expending of the funds, not the prohibition on appropriating.
Move that amendment.
Can you report that one more time, please?
Sure. Got your pencil.
On line 32, after section, insert the words prohibiting the expending of state funds or general funds, I think is the new language.
Mr. Chair.
State general funds.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peterson.
I mean, I hate to sort of get off the love train here, but who exactly is going to pay this penalty? I mean, are we going to like hit the president of some state university medical school? I mean, first of all, you have obvious issue of sovereign immunity if it's a state agency, such as a state university or a state medical school. If it's a private medical clinic, then who would be liable? The CEO, the corporation? I mean, this is a civil penalty. It's not a criminal penalty. Who would be the liable person? You're going to have to show intent. You're going to have to show that they knew about the expenditure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying, you know, of the one thing of this great bill that I have with Senator Sturtevant, we have kind of thrown this back and forth. You know, most, whether it be an animal care committee that we discussed, all of those, and the universities or those that are conducting the research, they all have to comply with the law. When they see this law, we know that they're going to comply with the law. I can tell you that of all the things that I do, other than having the ideas for these bills, I don't write them. And if those gentlemen have a way out of this, then I'm fine with that. What we're really doing is we're throwing down that marker and making a policy statement that says, look, we're not going to use taxpayer money the dollars of our citizens that are given to us, that we're the stewards of, to conduct painful experiments. We're not going to do it.
Mr. Chair, and I apologize, we're taking a long time on this. Why couldn't you just say no state funds shall be expended, period, full stop? Why do we have to have a civil penalty?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the gentleman by saying I don't have a problem with that.
All right. I make a motion, we take out the civil penalty. I just don't see who would pay that.
Whoever the judge determines.
Oh, now we have a judge? I didn't realize we had a judge yet. Okay.
I would ask council if that accomplishes the purposes of the bill. Does that fix it? Okay. All right, is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
So you're striking line 31 and 32 now?
I guess.
Okay. Motion properly seconded to strike lines 31 and 32 of the bill. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Is anything left of this bill now?
The is left.
All right, and just because we've probably spent enough time on this one, it is now time for a motion if there is one. And if there is a motion to report as amended, it needs to be re-referred to Senate Finance, so you guys get to present this thing again.
You got a letter on this one? You did?
Yes,
Okay.
I sure do.
Very good.
I talked the chairman of courts out of taking it to courts too. You should thank me for that one. All right. Motion to report as amended and re-refer to Senate Finance. Clerk, please open the roll. Clerk, please close the roll. Holy cow, you got it.
15 ayes, 0 nays.
Got it. Thank you, Senator
Fought that
Stanley.
one
and
down to the ground. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Senator
you, members.
Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. Sturdivant.
Okay, how about Senator Chase, Dance? Holy cow. You have two, yes, ma'am. Unless you want somebody else to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with Senate Bill 247.
Yes, ma'am. Please, go ahead.
Okay, that's my industrial hemp, our industrial hemp, Senator Peake and my industrial hemp bill. And Mr. Chairman, this, there is a substitute.
Thank you. Can I have a motion on the substitute?
Oh, can
Motion.
you not hear me? I'm sorry.
Motion properly seconded to adopt substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, the substitute's before us, Senator Dance.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the substitute authorizes the Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services to undertake research through the establishment of a higher education industrial hemp research program. The bill will expand the opportunity to conduct industrial hemp research to all institutions of higher education in Virginia, whereas today, the existing law, only public institutions of higher education in Virginia may conduct industrial hemp research. This bill will allow farmers and processors who are interested in growing or processing industrial hemp in Virginia to take full advantage of the opportunities authorized by the 2014 Farm Bill. The bill also aims to expand the opportunity for industrial hemp research in Virginia by adding an industrial hemp research program directly managed by the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services that allows Virginia farmers and processors to grow or process industrial hemp without being a participant in a research program managed by an institution of higher education. The current industrial hemp grower licensure program would be replaced with a simpler registration program for growers and processors that envisions the registration of one person associated with each location where hemp will be grown or processed, and would eliminate the current requirement that the application process for a license include a fingerprint-based criminal history record check. This is the second go-round. The first go-round there was chief patroned by Delegate Yost and I, which allowed the universities to get started. It's been about 3 years now, and they're ready to roll out. The whole intent was a part of the Farm Bill to allow farmers to find a new source of economic growth and then to grow Virginia. And this is what we're offering up.
Senator Dance, I know that you've worked hard on this with stakeholders, and you've really taken the lead on this with the first bill and now this one. And this complies with all the federal requirements, and you've gotten all the stakeholders together, and everybody supports this bill, unless I misunderstand. Is that correct?
That is where we are. And I
Okay.
have with me, if you have questions.
I think you're okay, but if you let me just ask real quick, is there anybody who opposes this? Come on up. We'd love to hear from you. Don't tell us it's a marijuana bill. Senator Peake was all confused.
No, Mr. Chairman, our goal is to mitigate confusion. The department's concern is that this bill eliminates the background check for registered hemp growers, and we believe this is a big step for the Commonwealth, and we believe that those who grow industrial hemp should be above reproach and not people who might be inclined to violate the Drug Control Act and slip into this process. So we believe that background check is important to facilitate that so that we can do our enforcement job for the illegal marijuana operation.
Is that your only objection to the bill?
At this time, yes, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
All right. Thank you.
You want me to
Senator Dance, do you want to address that, or do you have somebody here who'd like to address that?
I've got the Director of Policy, Plan, and Research. I have the Deputy Commissioner, Charles Green, the analyst, Erin Williams. But I would say, having worked on this bill, that I understand that they said, there are people that say the difference between hemp and marijuana, and that's what the research has done. That's why we have the research universities, and I think that question, if they have one, it may be something that they're using to determine it, that we might help the state police do whatever they need to do, but I don't see this as a hindrance to this bill going forward.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of Senator Dance? Anybody want to make a motion? All right. Motion properly seconded to report the bill. Actually, we got to amend that and send it to Senate Finance. I'm sorry, but
No problem.
so is that an amended motion? Senate Finance. Motion to amend and send to re-refer to Senate Finance, properly supported. Clerk, would you please open the roll?
Okay, thank you. Let y'all know, okay, where's that roll?
Did Dick mean to abstain?
14 ayes, 0 nays, 1 abstention.
Thank you, and I understand that there is no amendment in the budget for that, but we're
Thank
past
you.
that. The
And
next
then,
one.
Senator
is-
Dance, you've got Senate Bill 450 next, and if you don't mind, in the midst of that, I'm going to shift over and let the infamous Senator Stanley take over, because I've got to run somewhere else. Senator
you.
Stanley, please behave yourself in the chair. Thank you.
Grant your proxy to him, he will come to the chair.
I would grant my proxy to him. Lord, watch over me.
Stanley comes to the chair.
Did you give it to him? Okay. Thank you.
What do we got left? Right here in your list? You are now in the chair and you are voting his proxy. Okay, very good. And I may need you to come. Senator Dance, I believe we're looking at SB 450. Is that true?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I apologize.
That sounds good, didn't it?
That sounds great.
Okay.
That's great. So come on over to local government and see that.
Okay. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Mr. Chairman, this legislation is trying to solve a puzzle. The puzzle is, how do you transfer a privately owned battlefield to the National Park Service if there is a state easement on it? This is challenging because the Park Service cannot accept properties with state easements. This bill says that the state will assign its easements to the Park Service if the property owner affirms that the battlefield will be protected by the Park Service. As you all know, one of the battlefield parks is in my district, and I believe this bill will help to expand those parks and make them more enjoyable for our constituents. It's that red tape that prevents this from happening, and this bill would address that.
Any questions of the patron with regard to this?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Black.
just one question. I understand what you're getting at. Can you explain what is the reason? How do we benefit from moving it from the state to the federal government?
I'll give you. It's private, and then we're going to have, the federal government would be taking care of this property, expanding this property, making it a wonderful place for you and me to go and utilize.
So they can improve it, and they also pick up the bills for it?
But they're not going to handle it with that easement, and so that's what it is.
I understand,
Get that out the
I
way,
understand the
yes,
easement,
yes.
and that certainly makes sense to,
Yes.
basically to quiet title, which is what you're trying to do, is to ease that so they can acquire it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay.
Ms. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Sorry, we were in some consultation. Please, go ahead. Senator McClellan.
Thank you. I have a quick question. First, I just want to say I support this and think this is necessary, but I have a quick question about if there is a state easement on this property that's being transferred, is there anything in the bill that would address what happens if the federal government ends up not using the property that's transferred to them in the manner that, for the purpose that it was so transferred? Is there anything that would either revert that easement back to the state or prevent a different use from being used in the first place?
Is it all right if he speaks, Mr. Chair?
Please, of course. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Alexander McCauley, representing the Civil War Trust. And, Mr. Chairman, I would say to Senator McClellan, if I understand her question, is how do we know the property is going to be protected once it's transferred? Is that the question?
It's not so much the property itself being protected, so it is going to be transferred with a state easement, right?
Correct.
Okay. As I understand it, typically, if property is transferred with a state easement, there's some provision that if the property ends up being used for a purpose other than what it was transferred for, then either the state's, there's some reversionary clause to protect the state's interest in that easement there. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, is there anything either in this bill or how would that be addressed in this situation?
Mr. Chairman, I would say to Senator McClellan that, this is a issue of the so-called reverter clause.
Yes.
And the last time that this came up was the transfer of a property called Comico. And
yes.
You probably remember this. And the state insisted on a reverter clause in that transaction. And it triggers a host of problems. And the Park Service has said that they will not accept future. We've had, and I've been on these discussions with the Park Service and the Department of Justice and so forth, and they've said they won't accept properties with a reverter clause. And I think that reverter clauses aren't necessary. There's no example ever of the Park Service taking a battlefield and doing anything other than protecting it and enhancing it for the visitors to see. So I think it's sort of I don't think it's a big issue, but it's a question that has been raised, and that's how I would answer it, Mr. Chairman.
So just a follow-up to make sure, so if I understood you correctly.
Senator McClellan.
Sorry, thank you. If there was something put in this bill that required a reverter clause, that would defeat the whole purpose of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I would say to Senator McClellan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
I have this new Q thing. Senator Marston, do you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, Senator Dance, Mr. McCauley, does this the state, would a state-granted utility easement be in any way interfered with here? Would the transfer mean that you couldn't run an electric line when you needed to do it, or underground something that's in a utility easement?
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, acceptable to you, I'd like to ask Kathy Robertson, who's an attorney with the Civil War Trust, to answer that question.
Sure.
I'd just like to answer no in the case of a utility easement, because this bill is specifically defined as easements, conservation easements granted by the Board of Historic Resources.
Thank you.
So only those.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask on lines 28 through 30, if you could just help me there. It says the property after its acquisition by the United States will be subject to the requirements of 54 USC 100, 101, 36 CFR 2.1, and other applicable federal laws and regulations for preservation and protection of natural, cultural, and historic resources in national parks, etc., sustaining the conservation purpose of the easement, public access to the battlefield property, interpretation, and study of the battlefield property. Doesn't that mean there's some kind of agreement that they're going to abide by this? I don't know what the U.S. Code section is.
Mr. Chairman, I would say to Senator Evan, if I understand the question, you're asking what these code sections say? Okay. Again, if I could defer to Ms. Kathy Roberts on that.
Certainly.
Yes, the citation here refers to the establishment of the National Park System, and that the easements would be administered in accordance with the National Park Service regulations. In addition to that, each easement was federally funded in addition to whatever other funding sources, and that federal funding requires that under the Land and Water Conservation Fund Act, any change in use would require the Secretary of the Interior's approval. So they are subject to use restrictions that require it to be solely used for outdoor recreation, battlefield preservation.
Senator Evan, further? Okay. Any other questions for the patron? Seeing none, is there anyone here who would like to speak in support of the bill? If so, come now and forever. That's right. Yes, sir. Please identify yourself. Welcome to the Agriculture Committee.
Members of the committee, my name is Adam Gillenwater with the Civil War Trust. Kathy and I work together to preserve battlefield land in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The Trust is a national nonprofit organization. We've saved land in 24 different states, but half of that land is in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We've saved more than 25,000 acres here. We're really appreciative to Senator Dance for patroning this legislation. As she mentioned, this solves a puzzle for us, and it's an important one, especially with the expansion of the Petersburg boundary this past year by 7,000 acres. We now have thousands of acres in the Commonwealth of Virginia, specifically at Petersburg and at Richmond National Battlefield, that are eligible for inclusion in those parks. And this legislation will help us to facilitate that transfer, to increase opportunities for public access and interpretation, to relieve the Commonwealth of the burden of stewarding these easements, while, as Kathy mentioned, still ensuring their perpetual protection for years to come, and allowing the trust then to reinvest, any proceeds we might get from selling this land to the federal government back into additional preservation in the state of Virginia. So we ask you to vote yes on this legislation, and again, thank you to Senator Dance for patroning it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in support of this legislation? Is there anyone who would like to speak against this legislation? Please step forward. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Stephen Cobb, Deputy Attorney General, not here to speak for or against the legislation per se, but since there were some questions from the members as to how it may or may not affect the Commonwealth's land rights, I wanted to make myself available if there was questions from the dais.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a ringer in the house. Anybody wants to pick his brain? Anybody? Anybody? Does the Attorney General's office have an opinion on this bill?
I would note that I think I have not been so informed by the Department of Justice in my conversations with them or the National Park Service that a reversionary interest is a definitive barrier going forward. It's certainly one that does mean there's extra conversations.
Right.
But as these easements are in a manner purchased through general funds by then going through to nonprofits, we are extinguishing the legislation does extinguish the Department of Historic Resources discretion in whether or not to make that transfer. And does doing so without preserving the easement rights in the event that National Park Service later decides that for whatever reason they're no longer going to use this land for that purpose. The easement rights will then do not revert back to the Commonwealth, which, in a matter of speaking, and how you look at the legislation as it currently exists, would frustrate the purpose of having made that investment in the first place.
Mr.
Good
Chairman.
food for thought. In the words of the famous philosopher, Senator Oberenshain, do you support the bill? Do you support the bill? Do you like the bill? Do you like the bill? Do you support it? Senator Black.
Mr. Chairman, in light of your response, wouldn't it be fairly easy to draft a simple amendment that would address that issue? And if the federal government, for some reason, I can't imagine that they would go, that the organization would go through all of this with the federal government just to have it fall apart. But if it were necessary, couldn't you simply draft a small line amendment that would address that issue?
Senator Vance, yes, Senator Vance is correct. It is a puzzle, and we're planning to get together and try and see if
All right.
there is some additional language that could be
Mr. Chair,
added.
Senator Pierce.
could I offer a small amendment prohibiting oil drilling on these same properties?
I'd talk to your patron first. Fracking is okay, but drilling is bad? All right.
We're gonna-
listen. Little levity, that's fine.
To answer, if, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Absolutely,
back to
sir, please
Senator
do.
Black, well, I'm happy to work with parties and Senator Dance to see if there's appropriate language, and we already have a meeting scheduled for next week.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Black.
I would ask the patron if she would want this to go by for a day to.
I would say that I'd want this to go forward, and then I would make sure that if we needed to do something, I would stand boldly and ask for it, because I know that we were told that we should not try to do barefooted days on bills that need to move, but we can work on this.
Exactly
bill.
right, never. Well, look, the chairman's not here, so we can do whatever we want.
Move to report.
Second.
Move to report. A motion to move to report has been properly made and supported by a second. Is there any further discussion on that motion? No. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my first attempt at doing this, so now, are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Any senator want to change your vote or find out how to vote for Stewart? Where's that? Oh, gotcha. See? All right, the clerk will, I will close the roll. The vote really is 15-0. Your bill is reported.
Thank you, Mr.
Now,
Chair.
Senator Dance, you understand, and I think it's reasonable for all of us to say, this is going to go probably on the uncontested block. So this may breeze through the Senate. If those changes need to be made, we're going to take, of course, at face value, your promise to us that those changes will be made. And we would ask that any amendment there, of course, we're gonna hear about on the floor.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Dance. All right. Who's next? Oh, she's done. Emmett Hanger is no longer here. Ben Chafin. Senator Chafin. Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bills 374, 375 appear to be before us. Senator Ben Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to inform you that Virginia has an $8 billion beef cattle industry, and it's a very healthy industry right now. And this bill, and there's an amendment in the nature of a substitute. I'd like to have that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the substitute before us.
Reported.
Well, let's see it first. Or Senator Chafin, can you explain what the amendment does, please, so we're not having to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The amendment adds lines 175 through 179. And it just simply came as an oversight that 13.02 needed to be repealed, and that this would not affect the beef checkoff program.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions about the amendment as proposed by Senator Chafin? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt the amendment? Motion and a second being properly made to adopt the amendment. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign, and that amendment is before us. Senator Chafin.
So, Mr. Chairman, back in 1983, the Virginia Cattle Industry Fund was first created, and this bill will reinstate that fund and create a self-promotional assessment for the cattle industry. It will simplify the existing code, and basically it allows for voluntary promotions to be collected on cattle sold of $1 per head of cattle, which will all those monies will be used in Virginia to promote our beef cattle industry. So this was something that was talked about with the producers, with the market owners. 81% of those who were polled were favorable to reinstate this and to get some funding in order to get this promotional activity going.
Anybody have any questions of the patron? Senator Studeline. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, though.
Well, we just try to check with you first. Anybody else have any questions from the panel of the patron? Seeing none, is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the bill? If so, move right up on here. Come on.
Mr. Chairman, I knew you were going to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was very clever.
Thank you.
Jason Carter, Executive Director of the Virginia Cattlemen's Association and the Virginia Beef Industry Council. I represent the entities that conducted the survey for the utility of the potential reinstatement of the Virginia Cattle Assessment. So I'd like to answer any questions and assist the Senator, if I could, as well, about the process.
Anybody have any questions of this fine gentleman? I think Senator Chafin explained it pretty well. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Jonathan Harding with the Virginia Agribusiness Council. We're in support of this legislation. This has been a process going on over the past 2 years, working with industry and also VAC members that work with Virginia Cattlemen's Association, so we are in support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Ariel Brown with Virginia Farm Bureau, and again, we would just like to express our support for this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Pulse with the Virginia State Dairymen's Association. We also voice our support with some of the changes they made and having the optional refund on there. Our members are in support of this bill.
Thank you very much for coming and telling us that. Anybody else in support of Senator Chafin's utterly fabulous bill? I can keep going. Anybody in opposition?
Move to report.
A motion being probably been moved to report has probably been made with a proper second. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, the voting will now be open. It won't? Okay. Okay. The vote is now closed, and that reports 13-1. I think if you call this fee a fun fee or a beefy fee, you will probably get around Suit Line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Your next bill, 375.
Yes, sir.
Vegetarian or something?
I would like to beg the chairman's indulgence to pass this really good bill by that has a little stuttering start. Yeah, that needs a little work, and we are currently working on it. If you could pass it by for the day, I think we can fix it or strike it.
It was a great honor being appointed today vice chairman of this great committee. But, you know, he should have known what he's getting himself into. So I'm going to, without objection, pass by for the day, or do we need to vote on pass by? Yes, without objection, your bill will be passed by until the next meeting, but it will be the next meeting. And don't tell him I did it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Chafin. All right, Evan Hanger is not here. Linwood Lewis. Senator Lewis. Been quiet all day, which usually is a very scary thing for a Hampton-Sydney graduate.
Let's see, Mr. Chairman, if the chair doesn't mind, I think we'll start with Senate Bill 218.
Ladies and gentlemen, before this committee is Senate Bill 218. And when you're ready, Senator Lewis, you may proceed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, oh, I'm sorry, there is an amendment in the nature of substitute, Mr. Chairman.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have coming before us an amendment in the nature of substitute. Senator Lewis, if you will tell us what the amendment does.
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, the amendment, Mr. Chairman, essentially incorporates several line amendments, which really are technical amendments that don't really change the upshot of the bill. So I'll give you the overview of the bill, and we've got some folks here to speak to it.
Okay. And now, we've got an amendment before us that's need to be adopted. Do I have a motion to adopt? A motion that being made. Is there a second? Properly supported by a second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment being adopted, signal by saying aye. All opposed, same sign, and that is the adoption. The amendment is adopted and is now before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee,
Senator Lewis.
We had a bill in last year that was attempting to encourage some recycling efforts. It caused a little bit of heartburn. This bill that you have before you is the result of some extensive stakeholder discussions in the off-season. Virginia Retail Federation, Virginia Manufacturers Federation, Virginia Association of Counties, Virginia Beverage Association, Virginia Recycling Association, among several others. DEQ also participated in these discussions. And so that is resulted in the bill that you have before you. The bill that you have before you defines what is a beneficial use, also defines a beneficiation facility and a recycling center, and that such center shall be considered a manufacturer for the purpose of any state or local economic development incentive grant. Essentially what we're trying to do is encourage recycling and also at the same time provide product for manufacturing as well, and to encourage and support beneficial use. The bill also requires the Department of DEQ to provide the General Assembly by November 1, 2019 of an evaluation of Virginia's solid waste recycling rates and set a recommendation for improving the reliability of the supply of recycled materials during the next 10 years in order to provide for beneficial use as defined in the bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I have several folks here I think who may want to speak to the bill.
First, are there any questions of the patron by the panel? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassy with the Virginia Manufacturers Association. First, I want to thank the patron for 2 consecutive years helping us get this together. Also, we have a pretty large group of supporters that we've found consensus. I don't think we need to march them all up here today. If you'd like to hear from them, Mr. Chairman, they are here. I think maybe the retail merchants, just to hear from them. But here's the practical effect, just so you know what you're voting on. Right now, there is no codification of beneficial use specifically in the recycling industry for manufacturing use. In manufacturing, whether we make pipe paper, whether we make cans, whether we make plastics of any kind, we have to have a recyclable content. It's more energy efficient, extends landfill life, reduces litter, all the things you know. This bill finally codifies this as one of the duties of the DEQ in helping to expand beneficial use for industrial application. And it also has a reporting mechanism in here. By 2019, DEQ will be reporting back to you on a 10-year projection what we can do to materially improve the recycling rates at the local level. There is no mandate in it. It is just a report. And we also want to thank DEQ for their cooperation in helping us facilitate these meetings with the stakeholders in the off-season. But right now, that's what the bill does on the two fronts. The third major component of this is when we look at the importance of having beneficiation facilities. These are facilities that take product that would typically either go to waste or it would go to some other application, improve it and refine it so that we can make it back into final product. Again, boxes, paper, all of the above. Those facilities are very capital intensive and they are manufacturers, but believe it or not, in Virginia, in our code, we treat them for economic development purposes as waste operators. This code section actually says for the purposes of economic development, those types of facilities can be treated as economic development as manufacturers for economic development purposes. So this could lead to the possibility of, we think, 2 to 3 beneficiation and or recycling center upgrades. So it does have a positive economic impact if we can get more of these facilities running in the Commonwealth and we don't have to import these materials from out of state. Mr. Chairman, that's the content. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Vassy. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else who'd like to come up and voice their support?
Mr. Chairman, Joel Andrus, representing Owens, Illinois. OI is a glass bottle manufacturing plant. We have 2 plants here in the Commonwealth, one in Toano and one outside of Danville. I won't take up any more time, but we strive to get more recycled glass into our plants. It lowers our energy costs. It lowers our emissions. We think this bill is an important step to getting more of that recycled material in Virginia into our plants.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, please step forward and identify yourself. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kate Baker with the Virginia Retail Federation. We also support this bill. We think it's an important step in improving recycling in Virginia.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for this bill? Is there anyone who wants to speak in opposition to this bill?
Move to report.
Second. Motion being properly made and a second properly supported to report Senate Bill 218. The voting is now open. Stanley, vote. What? I swear, the vote is now closed. I didn't know if I was right or wrong on that one. Your bill, Senate Bill 218 passes 15 yeas, 0 nays. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lewis, may I ask this? Brett Vassy said this is the second time through. What happened to it last time?
Ran into a buzzsaw on the House side.
Okay, we know that.
Yeah.
We have sympathy for you, sir. All right. Let's see, you have one more, 217?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you, certainly, Mr. Chairman, appearing before you and acting as chairman with your history of animal advocacy and your great support for this bill last year, which I greatly appreciate your strong support of it. Identical to the version that you see here today. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 217 is a bill that seeks to perpetuate the Commonwealth's policy of cracking down on puppy mills. This is a bill which is pro-business, pro-Virginia dog breeder, pro-Virginia animal shelter, and we're trying to weed out some bad actors, and we're doing that by cracking down, again, on out-of-state puppy mills. According to this, allows localities the option to enact ordinances, to crack down on pet shops that may be receiving puppies from puppy mills outside the state of Virginia. According to an investigation of all Virginia pet shops completed by the Virginia Federation of Humane Societies, only one Virginia pet store selling dogs sells exclusively Virginia-bred puppies. According to information obtained by FOIA from the Virginia State Vet, most dogs being imported to Virginia, including to the city of Virginia Beach, the city of Stanton, Fairfax County, are coming from breeders in Missouri and Ohio. Missouri and Ohio are considered to be the worst states in the nation for puppy mills. I would also point out that I believe Fairfax County has this in its legislative agenda as well. Virginia Beach is interested in further restricting sales in 2 local pet shops that sell thousands of puppies each year from these out-of-state pet shops or puppy mills. The goal in this bill is not to shut down pet stores, but to give localities the opportunity to further control their pet populations. We put a tremendous burden on our localities and how they deal with their pets, and so this would give them a tool in the toolbox to adequately do that. Many millions of dollars are spent on this effort by localities, but we have not given them the appropriate tools to deal with their pet populations. This bill will empower localities with pet shops, that is 10 localities out of 133 in the Commonwealth, to manage their own pet populations so that understand that one size does not fit all. Without this power, we're asking our animal control services and our local shelters fighting the problem of pet overpopulation and the humane treatment of dogs and cats with one hand tied behind their back. So that, Mr. Chairman, is the bill in a nutshell.
Thanks, Senator Lewis. Any questions,
Chairman.
Senator Lewis? Senator Black.
I've always been confused about this term puppy mill. Long ago, I found this woman who was extremely wealthy, and she raised German shepherds, and she would actually fly a shepherd from Germany to mate with her dogs. And in order to acquire a dog, I had to interview and meet her standards before I could get one of the dogs that she wasn't, showing. Now, isn't that, if you're mating dogs, is that a puppy mill?
That Senator Black, I'll let Matt Gray with the Humane Society speak to the details of that, but that's not a puppy mill. There was a facility in Missouri, I believe, and they'll speak to that too, that was charged with environmental violations for burying 1,000 pounds of dead puppies. That's a puppy mill. You're talking about a reputable breeder. There's a distinction there that I'll let Mr. Gray speak to when he addresses.
Well, and I guess, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Black.
I guess I'm wondering, what is that distinction? Because her kennels were probably at a higher standard than my home was.
Sure.
And so where do we draw the line between what's a puppy mill and what is the breeder of extraordinarily high-grade dogs?
And if Mr. Chairman, with the chair's indulgence, I'll let Mr. Gray speak to that if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Can I let Mr. Gray answer Senator Black's question, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, that's fine. You will.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Black, thank you for your question. We think of there being a real difference between reputable breeders like the one that you've described, who require that the purchaser, who meet the purchaser face-to-face. That's a key, a face-to-face transaction, who expose the purchaser to where the puppies are being bred and raised, as you've described the situation that you were confronted with. And we think of puppy mills as being large-scale breeding operations. We're talking about hundreds or thousands of dogs that don't offer face-to-face transactions most of the time, right? A reputable, good breeder, one, doesn't provide their dogs to pet shops. They would sell directly to the purchaser. And two, they would focus on the face-to-face transaction. Does that make sense? Does that help? I hope.
Senator Black, does that help you?
Well, I guess it helps to some extent, but somewhere there's got to be a legal distinction. I personally, I don't have a problem with a pet store selling puppies. The example you gave of some place in Missouri that was, burying dogs or something. I'm not sure that most pet shops are in the business of burying dogs. I think they're in the business of nurturing and selling them so that they've got a good product that people are interested in acquiring.
But Mr. Chairman, Senator Black, they are facilitating the perpetuation of these puppy mills is what it comes down to. And oftentimes the product produced by these puppy mills, there's significant health issues with these puppies as well because of the way they're bred and produced in mass quantities. So,
Senator Lewis, so I'm just curious. I think I understand what you're talking about when you talk about the breeders, because I've bought a lot of dogs in my lifetime, and we go to somebody's home and we see the puppies that they've had, and the sire and the dam are on premises, and you get to see the whole thing, and it's usually just a backyard operation of some family. But this, and so you're excluding breeders entirely?
yes, this is the House version. This is the version of this bill that emerged from the House, on the House side last year. We significantly changed it to address the concerns of reputable breeders, not trying to.
My question is this, and I'm sympathetic to what you're doing because I abhor puppy mills, and anybody who does that to any breeder who does that, I think we ought to put them in jail. But is there a business model to just sell these that are coming from, I guess, a shelter, for lack of a better term? That's essentially what you're doing, is you're having animals that are in a shelter that would now be sold through a pet shop. Is that what this bill ultimately creates? Or am I seeing it wrong?
That's part of it. But it's not preventing pet shops from obtaining dogs, as one of these pet shops in Virginia already does, from reputable breeders.
Well, that's my question. I think they can't buy them from breeders unless I'm misunderstanding. You can't buy them from any breeder.
Right. It's only shelters.
It's only shelters,
Right.
the version I
Right.
have.
Right.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman.
And that's my only concern. Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question of the patron. Senator Lewis, it is true, would you agree with me, that we've outlawed puppy mills operating in the Commonwealth of Virginia? Is that right?
That is correct, Senator Stanley. Yes, sir.
Okay, further question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
And it's true also that over the past at least 5 or 6 years, we have carried legislation that has closed puppy mill loopholes wherever they have seized up and perhaps may be existing. Wouldn't you agree with me on that?
I agree with Senator Stanley.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm the Vice Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley,
and so,
although I would remind you, the witness is not under cross-examination.
I understand that. I understand. So we've done a lot to outlaw puppy mill dogs from coming into Virginia. And so it seems to me that what we're doing here, even though, believe me, I love and I want dogs that are rescued, that have been abandoned, to find forever homes. But what we're doing is cutting off perhaps what could be a reputable seller of puppies that are obtained from good breeders and brought into an area where people can then purchase those dogs without having to go to that backyard and find it. I mean, and we're punishing that. Aren't we punishing by eliminating even those that do it the right way?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, Senator Stanley, first of all, this bill enables localities to enact
I get that.
ordinances. This is not a Commonwealth-wide.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is that we've eliminated puppy mills from operating in Virginia. We do everything we can in terms of the legislation that we have had passed. You've carried it, I've carried it, to close the loopholes, to keep them out of the state. Not just from operating, but keep them out from bringing them into the state. I can't say that those laws prevent it from happening. But wouldn't this have an effect of a very legitimate, perhaps, entrepreneur, a small business owner who's going to the very best breeders and going into those backyards and then. Exactly what we wanted. Right. I mean, isn't that then we're defeating what exactly we want pet stores to be doing?
But Senator Stanley, that's not happening.
Okay.
That's not happening.
And when you say that, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Stanley.
So you're saying that it's not happening in our pet stores, that we have unscrupulous pet stores throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia that are selling puppy mill dogs. Is that true?
Only one Virginia pet store is currently, as I understand it, is currently selling dogs exclusively from Virginia-bred puppies. That's the statistic that I.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Stanley.
I did not mean to continue to go on, but there are good breeders, not just in Virginia, perhaps in Pennsylvania or Maryland or West Virginia and North Carolina. Just because they're not in the Commonwealth of Virginia doesn't mean necessarily that all are then puppy mills, correct?
I guess that is correct. I can't say that category.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Lewis. And Senator Lewis, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I just don't know if this may be a bridge too far for me. Thank you.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Lewis, I too appreciate what you're trying to do here. Do we have a bit of a Commerce Clause problem here where we're excluding people from another state from doing what you can do perhaps in Virginia?
No, you're not, that's not, no, sir, Mr. Chairman, Senator Morrison, that's not an issue that.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up. Is suppose there's nobody in Virginia who sells a particular breed of dog. They just, for whatever reason, there's hundreds of them, that nobody does those dogs, and you want one. How would that work if you had to go out of state to get one? Would this bill present any problem to that?
No. You go get the dog.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
But the pet shop can't get that dog for you. You can't use them as a middleman or whatever. That pet shop can't represent that owner who's the only one who sells, Tasmanian wolfhounds and.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Morrison, I mean, typically, having done this myself, what I do is locate a dog with a breeder in Pennsylvania or wherever, and I go get the dog.
So you just can't use a pet store as a intermediary?
You wouldn't. There would be no reason to.
Senator Lewis, I'm sensing that a lot of folks up here like what you're trying to accomplish, but have concerns about the language. Is it something you want to let it go by for the day and try to come up with something better, or will you want to just push forward today?
No, I mean, if there's some language that can be suggested that can massage it a little bit, I'm more than welcome to.
I don't know, but I'm sensing that people have concerns with the way it's drafted, but that everybody likes what you're trying to do. And
unfortunately, it's the same bill we sent out here unanimously last
Mr.
year.
I have a question.
I actually had one of the bills that cracked down on puppy mills and said you had to, for example, have the USDA number of the breeder and all these other things. I mean, we'd probably give some of these puppies better identification than we do the babies in our OBGYN units, quite frankly.
Right.
But the bottom line is, I don't think, closing down pet stores, just as a matter of course, seems a little bit too much. Right. I remember that there used to be a band called the Pet Shop Boys. I don't know if we're going to have to rename them the Animal Shelter Boys.
Dating yourself.
But,
that's bad.
All right, I'm at the end of the day.
Really bad joke.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question really quickly.
Senator McClellan.
Here's what I'm concerned about. I represent a lot of people of lower income who don't have the resources. If they want a purebred particular dog, they're not going to have the resources to find a breeder out of state and go get a dog. And as I read this bill, if there is not, I'm concerned about what are their options going to be. If we say that pet stores can only sell pets from a shelter or a nonprofit like the SPCA, and someone is looking for a particular dog who doesn't have the resources to find that dog out of state, what do they do?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Senator McClellan, let me do this in an effort to perhaps truncate this and maybe deal with some of these concerns. Let me bring Mr. Gray back up here again, who maybe has a more detailed grasp on the realities of how this works than
Senator Lewis, with all due respect, I don't think he's going to change anybody's mind. I wonder if you want more time to try to come up with better language, and that's up to you.
Yeah, no, sure.
That's entirely up to you. But I sense it. I sense your bill's not doing well.
I'll take another crack at it. I didn't quite anticipate, given its warm reception last year, that it would quite enhance it. Be glad to. And actually, this is a watered-down version of what the committee voted on last year. But anyway,
it's entirely up to you all.
Yeah, no, I'll let it go by.
Do we have a
Appreciate the
motion
opportunity. Appreciate the opportunity.
Carry it over for the day. Pass it by for the day. Is there a second to that? Second. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Motion properly seconded to carry the bill by for the day. Clerk, can you do we have to have a vote on that? No vote on that. All right. Thank you. All right. Before everybody jumps up, we need a motion to reconsider Senate Bill 374, which was Senator Chafin's bill. I think that was the self-assessment for the promotion of the cattle industry. And I think that bill, okay. Motion to reconsider that bill. All in favor, please. No, we got to do it electronically, don't we? Clerk, please open the roll. All right, that motion passes. Please close the roll. Then we would need a new motion to report that bill and re-refer to Senate Finance. There's a second to that? Okay, motion to report and re-refer to Senate Finance. Clerk, please open the roll. All right, that bill passes. You can close the roll as well. Oh, Lord.
Is that 214? 217. There they go. All right. All right.
Senator Lewis. And I apologize, but on Senate Bill 217, I realized after the fact that there were quite a few people here who would like to speak in opposition to that. We've given Senator Lewis the opportunity to go back and try to amend that bill. So I don't think the bill that he has now is what we're going to see, but if you want to speak, we certainly want to give you that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a lot of people that came down from a long distance and missed a day of work.
And I apologize.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, sir, and committee members. My name's Chris Fascini, and I'm here with my family to ask that you do not support 217. We've got a lot of people that would like to talk. I know time is short. If you could just bear with me for a little bit of history.
We just would tell you that we allow 5 minutes, so
Okay.
just be respectful of the
Yes,
folks
sir.
who would
Everybody
also
else will be very quick. Yes, sir. For the past 28 years, we've had the honor of serving our community with 2 pet stores, and we employ over 30 people. We adopt out healthy, intentionally bred puppies, quality USDA licensed and inspected breeders. We extend the health guarantees beyond the sale, and we are very transparent to our customers where our puppies come from with photos and videos showing not only the pictures of the puppies, but the pictures of the parents and the living conditions of where they come from as well. We do not work with puppy mills, and we personally pick these animals up ourselves from our breeders. We get to inspect every single breeder that we work with. So to say that we buy from puppy mills, that is not the case. We do not support it, and we do not buy from them. Animal issues, in our opinion, with regards to health, importation, sale, and warranty have always been regulated by the state at the state level, which creates a uniform set of standards for every locality. What this bill would do, it would possibly create a situation where you've got a hodgepodge of different laws and policies from one county to the next. And I don't think that that is probably in the best interest of animal welfare. We are not anti-shelter and we are not anti-rescue, but we are choice. Banning the sale of pets from sources besides shelters and rescues unintentionally moves pets to unregulated underground sales on the internet and unregulated breeders. One of the senators asked what a puppy mill is. A puppy mill is an unlicensed, unregulated, uninspected breeder that puts profits before the care of the animals. That is not who we work with. I've been in business for 28 years. Our industry has evolved. It has had some challenges in the past, but our industry is getting better every single day. Nearly 12,000 dogs were imported into Virginia in 2016 by 523 different rescues and shelters, according to the Department of Agriculture. Some of these dogs have dangerous bite histories, and yet they can be distributed by shelters and rescues without any of the requirements that we as pet store owners are under. And there's 12 of us in the Commonwealth that sell puppies. That is it. In 2017 alone, there were 2 deaths from adopted dog attacks in Virginia that were obtained from a rescue. Virginia is currently the 4th most regulated state in regards to its pet stores. If passed by a local ordinance, this bill would directly contradict the existing laws that are on the books. As a pet store, we are required by law to provide to our customers where the puppy came from, its age, its date, birth, its medical record, all this information. 99.9% of dogs in shelters, we would not be able to present that information to our customer. The other problem is this law would be forcing a for-profit to work directly with a nonprofit. Nothing in this law states that the nonprofit must work with us. So now we've got a problem. We would not have a viable source for obtaining pets. We would be forced to go out of business after 28 years in business paying taxes in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We believe the consumer has a right.
I would like to remind you, there's 5 minutes for the group, and
Okay.
you might want to let somebody
All right,
else
yes,
speak
sir.
as well. We understand a lot of
All
this.
right.
That's why we
Thank you.
recommended he probably come back
All right.
later.
I'm good. Thank you.
Can I ask him a question real quick?
Senator Lewis.
Just out of curiosity, where do you get your dogs?
Our dogs come from all over the place, some in Virginia, some in other states, but we personally pick them all up. They are from USDA licensed, regulated, and inspected breeders. The same breeders that the Humane Society of the United States forced us several years ago with a bill that said we had to work with only USDA licensed breeders. Now they're coming back several years later and saying that they're puppy mills, and they're not. There's
Thank
bad
you.
actors in every field, but the ones we work with, sir, are reputable.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. I'll be very brief. My name is Bob Likens. I represent the Pet Industry Joint Advisory Council. We're the nation's largest trade association for the entirety of the pet trade. Several of our Virginia members asked us to come down and speak on this. Chris has already spoken about the tapestry of different challenges that would exist. I just want to mention that Senate Bill 217 would have 2 particular effects. It would make it virtually impossible for pet stores to actually work with rescues or shelters because it outlaws the reselling of a dog.
I think we got that part. We questioned that ourselves, I think.
And the other thing it does is it undoes the work that Senator Stanley and his staff did a couple of years ago, sitting down with a variety of interested parties to include us and Humane Society of the United States to iron out the language that's currently existing in Virginia law. So with that, I will leave the rest of the time to others.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm the last one, I promise.
Oh, no, we want everybody to
I'll be
speak that
quick.
wants to speak.
Thank you. I'm Stephanie Pascini. I'm the wife of Chris that spoke a moment ago. I do ask that, I do say that if this was passed, it could ultimately close down our family business. I mean, as you guys have heard before, it requires the rescue groups to, it requires us to work with the rescue groups, but it does not require the rescue groups to work with us. 6 years ago, we were one of the places that our local shelter was used to help adopt cats. And we were happy to work with them, and we were able to increase the cats adopted in our area. But a new director came into our local shelter who was an animal rights activist and called me up and said, we're not interested in working with you anymore. Even though, you know, I knew what we were doing was good for our community. Pet stores are not a problem with pet overpopulation. You guys know that in 2016, the rescue groups and shelters imported nearly 1 million dogs to help supply our shelters in the United States. We imported them from overseas. We are always for pro-animal welfare, and we will never work with a puppy mill. And we do stand behind our industry and want all of the actors in Virginia to be good actors. We are asking today to please, protect our industry, please protect our livelihood, and allow us to continue. And I think you guys have. Y'all, thank you for allowing us to continue to sell healthy puppies to, happy families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, I'm Chris
Yes, sir.
Costa. I represent the Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County.
This topic is not in our legislative program. I just clarified that for Senator Lewis. Apparently, someone else may have told him that. The board has no position on this bill. I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually speaking in support, and I've come a long way too, so I figured I'd
Well,
quickly
you know
say
what? Then
something.
if the opposition's finished, the support can begin. You want to speak against it? If you could, very briefly, because
Yes, sir.
fortunately, they used all your time.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Kareem Koshak. I opened my pet shop when I was 22 years old. It's my dream. So this bill will absolutely shut me down. I do everything I can to make sure that everything is done correctly. I speak on behalf of the animals. I help tremendous amount of families figure out their ways through their pets. I can't see a reason why this would be a good thing. I honestly do a good job. I try every day. If you'd like to find out, please come to my store. I'd like to meet you.
Where's your store?
Fairfax City. I would love to have you in my shop. I'll be there Sunday morning if you'd like to come.
He'll come visit your store. Thank you.
Absolutely, please do. Thank you.
All right. Would you like to come up and speak now in support?
My name is Amy Jesse, and I am the Policy Director with the Humane Society of the United States, and I focus on puppy mill issues. A few things, rather than go into what I was going to say, I'm just going to try to counter some of the misinformation that's been presented. One thing that seems to be sort of lost in this conversation is that this is just giving localities authority to do this if they want to regulate this issue if they want to.
We understand.
My question is, why would a really good business doing everything right be so afraid of that, right? Why not take this up with their local elected officials? Why not give people in these communities the right to take this up with the local elected officials if they feel that it's such a problem, which so many citizens in Virginia do? And they want to be able to go to elected officials. People in other states have the opportunity to do that. I work with them all the time. When Virginians call me and say, what can I do? I have to explain to them that their local officials' hands are tied and they have a lot less options than people in other states do. And that's unfortunate. And to me, that's what this bill is really about. Give Virginians the opportunity to address what they feel is a local issue with a local business affecting people in their community. Give them the right to address this with their local officials and give those local officials the right to actually do something about it. And all of the problems that come with puppy selling pet stores come back to where they're sourcing their animals from. All of the problems, that the dogs are sick, that they have behavioral problems, that they are now spreading diseases that lead to humans becoming sick. All of these things are because of where they're sourcing from. And they are sourcing from irreputable breeders. We know this because reputable breeders don't sell to pet stores. It's in their breed club's codes of ethics that they shouldn't. And they would never just hand over a puppy to a truck driver and say, good luck, hope this puppy's life turns out well when it's shipped across the country to a pet store. That is not how responsible breeders operate. Also, someone brought up earlier that this might have legal issues. These types of laws have been challenged in court several times. They've been upheld every single time on constitutional grounds, and my legal team has been part of those challenges, and I can send much more information if that's a big concern. And then one other thing I'll say is that I'm working with legislators all over the country on this issue. Several states are pursuing this issue on a state level, and they're going to be doing what Virginia is just considering letting localities do. So if Virginia doesn't even want to give localities the right to take up this issue, which most localities in the country already have, it concerns me that Virginia is just such on the wrong side of this issue that other states are moving so far in the other direction, taking such a strong stance against cruel puppy mills and their sales outlets.
Well, let me just say to you, I appreciate what you're saying. Virginia has worked very hard and taken some good positions to try to outlaw puppy mills and punish them and good enforcement positions. And I think all of us up here want to continue to do that.
Sure.
The problem with your bill is you're punishing the good actors with the bad actors, and you don't discern between the two.
Sure.
You put the good pet stores out of business along with the bad pet stores, and I think that's what everybody up here is concerned about, and that's why we suggested to Senator Lewis that perhaps he go back and try to figure out a way just to get at the bad actors and not the people who are doing it the right way. So I feel compelled to tell you that's where we are on this.
Sure. And I do understand that. And I think and I'm glad that you all are taking more time on this, because I think with more education on this issue, we can come to a good place. Because there's so much more to say, and I don't want to take up any more of your time, but there's a lot of information that I think would help you all understand this issue and see why the bill that is in front of you now is the best option.
Well, thank you, Senator McClellan. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is, rather than an outright ban on who can you buy puppies from if you are a pet store, or who can you get your puppies from if you're a pet store, isn't the answer, to the extent that you think there are not enough protections in place to shut down puppy mills and bad breeders, to say these are the conditions under which you can get puppies? And not just who you're getting them from, but these are the puppies we want you to get. And that, to me, would address all of the concerns that you're hearing, so that the good stores that are going through their own due diligence to make sure they are getting healthy, well cared for puppies aren't shut down along with the rest.
Well, a couple of things with that. First of all, I think it's really important to note that the huge majority of pet stores in this country, including the largest and most successful chains, do not sell puppies. Never have, never will, and are vocal about that. So when we're talking about the good pet stores, I can't help but think those are the pet stores that have chosen to distance themselves from the sale of puppies because they don't want to be involved in that issue because it is so problematic. So that's part of it. And again, that's the huge majority. And my organization works with pet stores that sell puppies to help them convert to what we call a more humane model. And those pet stores are thriving on a model. Maybe that just means offering more services or offering different products. Maybe that means bringing in rescue animals. They don't have to do that, but sometimes they can. And these stores are thriving. They're doing really well on this, and we're there to help them make that change. We're not just trying to throw pet stores under the bus here. We want them to be part of what you all refer to as the good pet stores. We want to help them get there because it's good for animals, it's good for consumers, it's good for business. So that's part of it. The other part is that while it sounds good to say pet stores should only source from breeders that treat dogs a certain way, it's really, really, really difficult, if not impossible, to enforce in this state because these pet stores are sourcing from out-of-state puppy mills that Virginia can't go. I assume you can't have someone that goes and visits all of these facilities and makes sure that they're adhering to certain standards. And when we have bills like Virginia has right now that tries to regulate which licensed breeders pet stores can source from, there's so many ways of getting around that. There's so many loopholes. And the problem is that federally licensed breeders can treat animals horribly. The standards are so incredibly low that even someone with a clean USDA record that follows the Animal Welfare Act can treat dogs in a way that most Americans would find horrifying. So the system is broken, the larger system, but what localities can do and what now we're seeing states do on a statewide level is cut off one of the major supply chains for puppy mills.
Mr. Chair, I have a yes or no question.
Senator McClellan, yes, and we're kind of beating a horse
I
where
know,
the
this is
bill
my last question.
We're not even arguing the bill as before.
No,
But go ahead, Senator McClellan.
Is your ultimate goal here to prohibit pet stores from selling bred dogs at all?
What do you mean by bred?
Dogs from a breeder.
Well, yes, that's.
Thank you.
Well, to allow localities to do that.
Well, your bill does that, I can tell you. Senator Marsden and then Senator Peterson quickly.
Thank you. Very, very quickly, one partial answer to your question is that for a couple of things you brought up is, one, I think local pet shop owners are, it's very difficult to compete against some of the national chains in many respects unless, they are selling puppies, which is part of their business if they do it responsibly. But one of the concerns they might have too is there's a large national organization who doesn't believe that people ought to have pets, period. and they have, individuals, obviously, who, believe in that as well, and turning that over to small localities to do that, you could have that kind of an outcome. And I think that's one of the fears, is that's a growing kind of concern in this country, is that people shouldn't own pets to begin with. And I don't happen to subscribe to that, but.
I don't either.
And, but that is real. That is a real threat. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Senator Peters.
Super quickly. 2014, I had the bill which requires every dog which is sold in a pet store to be labeled with the USDA breeding number and all the other information, which has to be labeled, at the point of sale. That was your all's model legislation. I carried it at the suggestion of your former lobbyist. So, I mean, again, I felt like that was a great bill. I feel like it's in place, and obviously it'd become superfluous if we passed this bill, because then you couldn't sell it all. So anyways, I just wanted you to know that we did pass that bill.
I know.
And
it
that
was
was
a step in the right direction for sure.
All right.
But we believe localities should be able to go farther if
Okay.
that's needed in their community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We've got Senate Bill 81 before you all leave. Senator Hanger has been waiting patiently. You're going to be glad we did all these bills early on, too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the courtesy of the committee. Senate Bill 81, I felt was a very, very simple bill. It deals with landowner liability education activity, provides that when a landowner whose property is used for an educational activity, they would have no duty of care to a member of the public arising out of the educational use. We have, if you'll see in the code, we've granted a number of instances, some of them rather dangerous, for people to be on your land and no liability attaches. Our simple bills sometimes become complicated. The trial lawyers were talking to me about this. It's intended in most of the cases where I was trying to get at, where you have groups of people like soil and water conservation districts who do educational training, have farmers on their land for BMPs and different activities. Sometimes you do have children on there where they're doing stream monitoring and things of that sort, or observing farming activities. I have basically agreed, the trial lawyers had a rather large amendment, but they've agreed to a one-sentence amendment, which I'm okay with, and it makes them happier with the bill. And Scott has that amendment, Mr. Chairman, on line 42.
Report that, please, Scott.
Mr. Chairman, on Senate Bill 81, on line 42, after the word "except," we would insert this phrase: "except with respect to such hazardous conditions or uses of, structures on, or activities on such land or premises of which the landowner knows or should know, and." So it repeats some language from the line before, and it adds the requirement that the landowner knows or should know of.
All right, is there a motion on that amendment? Second? Motion properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would say that amendment basically tracks existing language in the lower part of the bill, but it makes clarity up there as well. And I hope it would be the pleasure of the committee to pass the bill as amended.
All right. Is anybody who opposes this? No, you don't. Oh, come. Oh, come on. Wait a minute.
I think
anybody out there who opposes it?
I think the trial lawyers were concerned, but they're good with it, with the amendment.
Trial lawyers are okay. Y'all worked it out. Okay. All right. Is there a motion? Motion properly seconded to report the bill. Clerk, would you please open the roll?
Can I vote from here? Yeah, I guess so.
You should be able to. Are there any proxies outstanding? No? It's gone. Okay. So we've got enough. That bill passes, doesn't it?
Ruff and Open Chain have a proxy. Who has those? Do you? How do you vote a proxy?
Well, it still passes, doesn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, 8-1. Or am I wrong? Still passes. It's majority of the committee.
Okay.
Right. Okay. We had a quorum, and it's a majority of the members, so it passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good job, Senator Hanger.
Thank you.
Despite Senator Peterson. All right, with that, thank you all so much for doing that docket, and the committee will rise.